Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Tynedale Local Area Council on Tuesday, the 15th of March. Members, please remember, if they've got any phones with them, please turn them off or put them on silent. And as always, if you're not using your microphone, please remember to switch it off. It does affect other people speaking. Right, then we'll go straight to item 1, which is to note that at this meeting of the County Council, at the meeting of the County Council on the 23rd of February 2022, Councillor Derek Kennedy, that young man over there, youngish, was appointed as Vice Chair. Younger than you. Most people are, Derek. But not by much. Right, we'll go to apologies for absence. Nicola?
Good afternoon. We have apologies for absence from Councillors Horncastle and Hutchinson.
Thank you very much. I've been told that Councillor Oliver, speak of the devil, and here he is on his way. Right then, item 4 is the minutes of the meeting of the Tynedale Local Area Council held on the 15th of February 2022, and they're to be confirmed as a true record. Can everyone confirm that they are a true record? Councillor Dale.
Can I just bring up one item, please, on page 4?
Okay, go ahead.
Local Area Work Programme. Just resolved that the minutes of the following meeting of Tynedale Local Area Council as circulated be confirmed as true and signed by the Chair, subject to the above amendment. And the above amendment was it was minutes of the request for the inclusion of an item in the work programme on the Borderlands development work in Hexham was declined. And I think I said at the time it was the chairman who declined it, and it wasn't the committee who declined it. And I think that should be stated. Because actually, otherwise it should go to the business chair. And it was declined. My request was declined by you, the chair.
Okay,
so
thank you.
Could that be minuted, please,
Nicola?
properly?
You got that?
Right. So just for clarity, just to make sure that we have the wording exactly right, so that last sentence should read was declined by the chair.
Yeah.
Right.
Please.
Just so that I have been provided with the wording.
Yeah, that's what was said.
Can I also add, Chair, that the reference to the next meeting should have actually read the 15th of March, and I think it said the 11th of January. So on the very last page of those minutes.
Yeah, that was spotted.
That was a typo.
But we'll still not sack you. You're all right.
Thank you.
Anybody else? No. Okay, we'll move on now to disclosure of members' interests. Anybody got an interest to declare? I'm not seeing any. In that case, we'll move on to the development control, and I'll hand over to Councillor Scott for this part of the meeting.
Good afternoon. So I'll just go through the planning procedure, planning application procedure. So I'll introduce the application. We'll then go to the planning officer for any updates. We'll go to public speaking. I believe there's a public speaker here today who will have 5 minutes to speak. Then we'll go to members' questions to planning officers. Then we'll need a proposer, a seconder, and then we can debate the planning application, and then we'll go to a vote. So I'll introduce the only planning application today. So 210367 FUL, part retrospective change of use from public house with staff accommodation to mixed use, including public house, bed and breakfast and podiatry. Internal and external works, including various windows, French doors, shed and decking. Crown Inn, Catton, Hexham, Northumberland, NE 479QS. So we'll go to the planning officer, Rachel.
Thank you, Chair. So, as you've just explained there, part retrospective planning permission is sought for the change of use of the Crown Inn at Catton from a public house with staff accommodation to a mixed use of a public house with staff accommodation, bed and breakfast and podiatry clinic. The part retrospective change of use also includes internal and external alterations to the building, as described in the committee report. And the application also includes the construction of a timber shed within the grounds of the Crown Inn and the installation of an area of external decking. There are no updates to give on the application. I'll just go through there. So this is the submitted location plan, which, apologies, which shows the Crown Inn here, which is located within the village of Catton and is adjacent to the B6295 main road, which runs through Catton, which connects Hexham to Allendale. Apologies. So this is an aerial plan, also showing the location of the Crown, which is here, if you can see my pointer there. Like I say, adjacent to the main road that runs through the village. And this is this area of hard standing here is the car park to the rear. Again, just another location plan, which is taken from our systems, which shows the application site in the hatched area there. So this is the existing site plan that's been submitted. This here is the public house with the car parking area to the rear. This is the submitted proposed site plan, which, as you can see there, the timber shed is shown to the rear, adjacent to the car park. So these are the plans for the shed, which has already been constructed and is domestic in scale. So these are the existing floor and roof plans. Just using my cursor there, as you can see, this area here and here is the current bar area, with the kitchen in this area, the toilets, ladies and gents toilets to the rear, and the bar stall. And then at first floor level is the private staff accommodation. So these are the proposed floor and roof plans. So the proposed change of use would reduce the size of the bar area associated with the public house to allow for the existing kitchen, which is in this area, to move it across, and to allow the creation of one bedroom at ground floor level, which is to be run as bed and breakfast accommodation. The proposed change of use would also include the reconfiguration of the toilets to the rear to allow for the creation of a podiatry room. The applicant has indicated that they wish to diversify the current business by introducing bed and breakfast accommodation and a podiatry clinic to make the running of the public house viable. It's worth noting that the Crown Inn would continue to operate as a public house, albeit in a reduced bar area. In terms of the floor area, it would be a 12% decrease in the floor area of the overall public house. These are the existing elevations. And then these are the proposed elevations with only minor alterations. As you can see, there's alterations to the existing dormer windows, the introduction of a new roof light to the north rear elevation. On the south front elevation, there's a window opening here that's being replaced with French doors. No alterations to the east elevation. And then to the west, there's the insertion of a new window opening at ground floor level. So these are photographs of the north elevation. As you can see there, the alterations being to the dormer windows and the insertion of the new roof light window. And also you can see the shed in its location there. These are photographs taken from showing the east elevation. There's no changes proposed to this elevation, which fronts the main road through Catton. Photos of the south elevation, with the only changes being the replacement of the window with the French doors and this external decking area, which would serve the bed and breakfast bedroom. This is a photo of the west elevation, again showing the decking and the insertion of the new window to this elevation. So these photos are internal photos of part of the bar area that's to be retained. There is to be redecoration throughout the public house. Further internal photographs of the bar area that's to be retained. These are internal photographs of the bed and breakfast accommodation, so this would be the bedroom for that. This room used to be the kitchen area. And these are internal photos of the podiatry room, which can be seen here, and then the reconfiguration of the toilets. And then this is internal photographs of the kitchen area, which was previously part of the bar area. A total of 65 objections, 7 representations of support and 2 general comments have been received in relation to this application. These are all summarised within the committee report, but are available to view in full on the Council's public access website, which you'll be aware of from the report. The concerns that have been, obviously there's been significant level of local objection raising concerns, such as, I'll just summarise those briefly. Sort of concerns about the majority of the works have been undertaken without planning permission, regarding the disproportionate size of the pub when compared to the size of the B&B and podiatry uses, concerns that the proposals would negatively impact upon the local community and would result in a loss of a community facility. All of these representations have been taken into consideration when assessing the application. Overall, the application would diversify the current business by introducing new uses in order to make the running of the pub viable. And although the Crown, and it must, just to clarify, the Crown Inn would continue to operate as a public house, albeit in a reduced bar area. The recommendation, therefore, is that of approval, as per the conditions set out in the committee report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Rachel. I'll now pass over to Mr. Gray. You have 5 minutes, Mr. Gray.
Thank you. Just very quickly then, we bought the house, the Crown House, in October 2020, and the property was in a poor condition. So one of the imperatives that we had was that it needed to be brought up to date and modernised, which is a driving force behind the external alterations. I apologise for the fact that certain works were undertaken, but our hand was forced to a certain extent because the roof was in a state of collapse in a certain area, and we were presented with a fait accompli. You either put the Velux window in now and move the dormers now, otherwise the roof will be put in. So we were kind of felt slightly forced into it. In addition to that, having said all of that, there is no change to the footprint of the property, which Rachel did highlight in her longer report. There has been previous applications which dramatically changed the footprint of the property, and both of those were approved in the past. The reason that the application is before you is because the Crown has been closed in the last 25 years as much as it's been open. It's been operated since 1999 with 5 different owners, all attempting to run the full-size bar with a full meal service, all of which subsequently closed down in financial failure. So it seems obvious to me that the only way to make it a success after 5 failures in a row is to do something slightly different. And that's why we've brought in the B&B, which I think by any measure is a standard part of very many public house businesses, and I wouldn't have thought would have been controversial. And indeed, most of the other pubs in the area already operate a bed and breakfast. Now, my partner Nicole's a podiatrist, so at the very last minute we thought, well, why not do podiatry? And we were not expecting it to be quite as controversial as it is, but rest assured, it will only ever be a very small part of the business. There was 65 objections, and that's why I'm sitting here today. It was largely down to a one-man campaign who had a meeting in the village hall to discuss the future of the Crown without inviting the owners of the Crown, and then conducted a leaflet campaign. I've got a copy of the leaflet, and it contains many inaccuracies. They also went door to door telling people that the value of the house was going to go down because of the things that were happening at the Crown. So what I'm briefly saying is very many of the objections were based on information obtained from this individual and his people that he was working with under false assumptions. Of the 65 objections, 0 objectors asked me what we were going to do with the Crown. Not one person before they objected troubled, even though we're available on Facebook, email, phone, everything. Nobody. Unfortunately, a lot of there's several myths, and I'll be very brief, that there were conditions attached. None of these are true. Conditions were attached to the purchase, that the residents group stepped aside in order for us to buy it. They never even got the funds together or made an offer. Undertakings were given about the Crown when we bought it. Not true. That the Crown was viable. It wasn't. We plan to make it a house or build on the car park. Well, we don't. But the point is, I believe that planning does not take into account speculation about future intentions. Anyway, also that the Crown was designed to fail. I believe I'm designing it to succeed, not to fail, and the previous owners are the ones that failed. And that the bar's too small. Well, bearing in mind, I've spoken extensively to the previous owner, the numbers of people he used to visit, and I believe that this is the right size for the business going forward, and that the additional income brought in predominantly by bed and breakfast is something that will balance the income and make it a viable community asset. And to stress very strongly, this was always intended to be and will remain predominantly a public house. And by way of confirmation of that, I've obtained my personal licence through Northumberland County Council. We've had a bar built, which was expensive and featured in those photographs. The premises licence, which Rachel said was in the course of going through, has now been approved. And I'm paying for a pub sign to be put up sometime shortly. Thanks very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. So we'll go to members' questions to planning officers, and I'll start with Councillor Sesford.
Thank you very much. Okay, I have got a couple of questions to the planning officer. I just want to clarify something first, if I may. We have no objectors speaking here today. There's been reference that there were 65 objections altogether. So this message goes out to those who may be watching this on YouTube and whatever. I have checked with the officers, and all the due procedures were carried out within the right time scales, so that people could book in to speak at this meeting, but nobody did within the time, which was 12 o'clock yesterday. We can't have a floating time, and with 65 objectors, you allow one, and then all 64 of the other ones may complain. And that is as it is, and that is the fact. So I made the decision not to allow people to speak late at this meeting. Okay. What I could also say for those who are watching on TV is that there is a summary of responses that goes out to all the officers. But on top of that, of course, the comments are all on the portal. And what we have in front of us here are a group of very experienced councillors who've been through these processes quite a few times before. So I can guarantee that what happens here will be totally above board and legal and thorough, despite the fact that no objector has actually managed to turn up today to speak. So I just wanted to clarify that point to those listening on YouTube first. Right, I have a couple of questions myself. I would like to ask, and apologies, Rachel, if you mentioned and I didn't quite hear you. Can I ask two questions? One is, how much is the public house area actually being reduced? And the second, can you clarify that there is actually staff accommodation on these premises?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so in terms of the calculations, it was overall was a 12% decrease in the floor area of the overall public house due to the creation of the podiatry room and the bed and breakfast room. And then on your second point, the staff accommodation, so the existing public house has private staff accommodation on the first floor level, which would be remaining the same in this instance as well. That would not be changing. So they would have staff accommodation on the premises, and it would be the first floor.
Okay, just going back to that first one, please, Rachel. You say there's been a 12% increase in floor area because of the extension work that's been carried out there. The question was, what about the bar area itself? So what actually, I mean, looking at the plans, it looks like one of the bar areas has sort of been reduced by a half. So, I mean, I don't know what that is altogether, maybe a 30% reduction or something. Do you have a...
It is. I have done the calculations for the bar area as well, and it would be a 31% decrease in the size of the bar area, so the area where people would be seated.
Okay, that's what you get with being a mathematician then, not a bad guess. There you go.
Councillor Stewart.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you to the officer, and I'll echo the comments of Councillor Sesford. We have got links, we've seen a lot of the objections here. I do know this pub. I was a regular in this pub about 40 years ago. I think the price has probably gone up somewhat now. But I haven't been in the last 5 years. And what's happened, why I haven't been there, is one of the reasons, is that the world has changed. And this pub has been open, closed more than I can actually remember. So I know you probably can't answer these questions I'm going to put to you, but I'm going to put them because they're quite pertinent, I believe. Do you know the reasons why this particular pub closes down so much over the years? And is there a minimum and a maximum size for a public house? Could you have the world's smallest pub there? Is there anything along those lines? There's nothing planning for that. Could it be that this application is, with respect to the gentleman who spoke before, could it be some way of getting around the plans to create a dwelling house there? Because I see that there was an application to move away from a pub to a dwelling some time ago, and that was refused. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart. Just to answer your first question about why did it close, obviously the only information that we have is it wasn't economically viable, but there are obviously a huge number of reasons, including possible personal reasons of the applicant, so I wouldn't wish to comment on that. Secondly, saying is there a minimum size of a pub? I've actually been in the smallest pub in Britain, which is considerably smaller than this, in Southport.
Where's that?
It's in Southport. No, the answer to the question is there is no minimum size you can call a public house, as far as I'm aware, certainly not in planning legislation. So that's not something that we would be considering here today. And your last question was, could it be turned into a house without planning permission? So obviously the situation that we're in now is that it's retained as a pub. It's going to be a mixed use if it's granted here today for bed and breakfast, podiatry and the public house with staff accommodation. You would not be able to just occupy the entire dwelling as the entire building as a dwelling without coming in for an application for a change of use from the pub to a residential dwelling. What members should be mindful of and that we can't restrict today is whether or not that pub stays open. There's nothing that we can do in planning terms to actually condition that it has to remain open. Does that answer your question?
Thank you. I've actually been to the highest pub, so this is good. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Dale.
Thank you very much. Can I just ask one or two questions? One is just a matter of information for people who haven't dealt with the fact that it is retrospective or part retrospective. Has got nothing to do with this planning application at all. It has to be seen as a new planning application. And second, that's just for people who haven't been dealing with this before, a retrospective planning application. And then can I just go on to ask you about the new emerging planning policy. We've already got on the page 26 EDT 1 Principles for Economic Development and Tourism, and then we've also, which is a Tynedale, and then we've got the policy TM6 and TM7, which are both Tynedale policies, and we've also got the new policy on the local village convenience shops and public houses. Am I right in saying they all support the development or continuation of public houses in the villages as a tourism and actually a local centre?
Thank you, Councillor Dale. Just on your first point, yes, it's not material that the applications are retrospective. We have to treat them as though they were any other type of application. In reference to your second point about the policies, the relevant ones that we're looking are, obviously you've pointed out there, CS1 of the existing plans, but they are mirrored by the new policies INF2 and INF3, which are all about the retention of public houses and services. As Rachel set out in her report, essentially as this application is to retain the pub and to not actually lose that facility, we're quite restricted in how we can apply that policy. As far as we're concerned, there is no loss of the pub, it's still existing, and that's supported by the other policies, the other economic and tourism policies, which are encouraging of diversification and other additional facilities. So that's where we're saying that we're supporting the diversification of the pub and for the bed and breakfast accommodation as set out in the report.
Thank you. Can I just ask one other thing, just basically on the fact that when actually the previous applications that came in for change of use were all actually under Tynedale Council, if I recall, and we had a lot of them. I can remember when it was closing and whatever, all that going on, but actually they were all turned down because of actually the development tourism reasons, I think, when they were withdrawn.
Yes, so some of the members might recall that there was a public inquiry held a few years ago where it was sought to change the use completely into a dwelling, and obviously in that case it was the entire loss of the pub and it was dismissed.
Thank you.
Councillor Morfitt.
Thank you. I noticed that the gents' toilets is going to be converted to the podiatry room, and the ladies' toilets converted to a disabled toilet and a non-disabled toilet, which I assume is unisex. So the only non-disabled toilet is quite small, and I think unisex, so shared. So does the fact the toilet's going to be so small constitute a material consideration?
Thank you very much. In terms of the toilets, obviously the arrangement is changing. We have consulted with our public protection team who have no objections to what's proposed, and obviously commensurate with the scale of the pub here, that they're happy that this is acceptable.
Any other questions? Councillor Sharp.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, this. I mean, you know, over the 35 years or so I've been on the council, you know, we have, over the years, you know, discussed pubs in the past. Many times have we discussed similar issues, you know. What I'm sort of trying to sort here, I know this pub very well. I used to go there a lot to eat in this pub and all the rest of it. And in the conservatory, it was always very nice looking out over the south side. What I'm trying to understand here, is this still going to be a pub serving food and concentrating on the food element? It may not be relevant totally for the planning application, but it is as far as the tourism element is concerned, and you know why. Because there's no doubt this pub can be viable. There's no doubt about that. We've been here dozens of times over the years discussing these sort of issues. The point I'm trying to get at here, if the bar size is 31% reduced, which I presume at the end of the day is totally because the kitchen is coming into the existing bar area, I presume that's the total 31%. Well, I was interested in the case obviously mentioned before, a 12% figure, so I'm very pleased Councillor Sesford pointed that out, because that is a matter which should have been disclosed at the start. My question is here, is this still going to be a sort of a, because 31% is a lot to reduce. I take the point they've still got a bar area. When the question is this going to be a pub which is going to be used for tourists, for locals to go and have meals and all the rest of it? Because my concern on some of these applications is when it goes further down the line, they then start to come this house business because it's not viable again. And we've been there before.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Just to clarify, obviously the pub is an existing use that has no restrictions on whether they can serve food or not, or how much, or what times. So in terms of where we're going forward, that's not a question we've asked of the applicant, because it's sort of beyond our control to cover. But what they have confirmed to the case officer on their site visit is that while they've been refitting the kitchen, they have included appliances which would be able to be used for commercial catering. So I would imagine that they will be serving food, but that's not something that we could consider today.
Any other questions? No. So do we have a proposer for this planning application? Councillor Dale.
Thank you. Just to say, I would propose this application. I think it's a really good application. I think it's a really good application, and I think basically it supports all our planning policies, and our planning policies are for the development of tourism, especially actually in the AONB. The AONB, I know, would be supporting this, so I support it, and I think it's really, and I hope that it makes it viable for the future, and that's an important issue. And I think these new developments within the pub itself, within the area of the pub itself, will actually help the pub be sustainable. And I support the recommendation.
Councillor Stewart. So we'll go to a debate. Councillor Kennedy.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I've been on the council many years and seen this one come backwards and forwards about turning the pub into a house and all sorts of stuff. And it is in a key location for Catton. You know, it's a main road. You pass it. You know, if you go into Allendale and all that type of stuff. So it is in a very prominent position. You know, well known by those who are around that area. So it is a key public facility. So we've seen and we've heard. And anybody who's driven around that area, you one day you see that pub open, the next day you see it's closed, and then it's closed for a long time, then it's open for a bit, and it's closed again. So it's had a pretty difficult number of years trying to find its way, and a lot of us want that facility to remain open because it provides such a community asset. So obviously the world is changing and people's habits are changing. What I see here is somebody putting in an application who is trying to ensure that this public facility continues, and by readjusting the business into bed and breakfast and to do the podiatry. I had to look that up actually because I wasn't sure what that actually meant. so which I've learned is about skeletal and about your foot and all that type of stuff. So obviously there's a piece of work going on there. So I see this as really positive. I recognise that there's been a number of residents who've have some concerns about this, but I think if I was a resident, I'd be looking at this through different spectacles, to be honest. And I think this is a really positive thing. It's obviously somebody who's investing money in there. I do take the point that Councillor Sharp raised about is there going to be bar food? But looking at what's being spent on with regards to kitchens, you're kind of anticipating that would be quite a lot of money to invest and not do food is such. So I can only assume that that's part of the offer. So I think this is a good thing. I think this is looking for the business to remain sustainable, which has been a real challenge over the years. So it has my full support.
Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I think it's actually a positive. It's trying to retain a pub, and they can't change the use without coming back for another application. So any fears that may happen are sort of ungrounded. That, you know, it may be that it won't work and it will come back for an application, but it will have to go through an application process. So it can't just be done automatically. It gives another bed and breakfast room in a an area of tourism. So it is a boost for the local economy. So I support the application also.
Councillor Riddle.
Thank you, Chairman. You know, we sometimes get accused of just being for tourists. For me, this isn't just for tourists. I don't know how many pubs are closing a week in the country, but it's quite a sizable number. And, you know, I think if the 65 people that have objected actually supported the place, then, you know, it might not have had to have an application in the first place. But, you know, it's a different story. What is disappointing is the fact that, you know, a lot of these objections, actually the objections aren't material planning conditions. The fact that it, you know, there's another similar business, a podiatry business, you know, the bed and breakfast element would adversely affect other bed and breakfasts in the area. That isn't a planning issue, and, you know, we should all remember that. And the fact it might affect house prices, again, not a planning issue. So, you know, I think a lot of the objections have been put in without actual proper planning grounds. I support the application as well. You know, I take my hat off to someone that's willing to invest. Clearly, by the photographs, there's been a heck of a lot of investment with the equipment that's in those photographs, in the kitchens, etc. And, you know, if the pub wasn't viable before, and it's now about a third or nearly a third smaller, hopefully, you know, it's still going to be big enough, and it still could be a community hub if the community back it rather than fight it.
Councillor Morfitt, then we'll go to Miss Councillor Cessford.
Thank you. I was at a Visit Northumberland cycle tourism workshop the other week, and they told us they're developing a cycling charter to encourage accommodation providers to make their accommodation more cycling friendly. That's in exchange for the right to use a cycling charter logo. And I'm not sure if the scheme's been launched yet, but I think it will be soon. And I just wanted to draw the applicant's attention to it. This is a popular area for cycling and cycle tourism. And according to the Department for Transport, cycle tourists spend 9% more than the typical tourist. So cycling tourism is a good thing for the rural economy. And I think this development could really help to boost it.
Thank you very much. People don't like change, and when the pub is at risk of going, they obviously like that even less. Talk about it remaining as a community hub and a focal point in the village, but if it's closed, it's not neither of them, and that's what it has been for a great deal of the time. It clearly wasn't viable before, otherwise it would still be open. So it has to be made viable, and you do that by diversifying. So I welcome the applicant for trying to find ways of making it viable, and I support them wholeheartedly on this, and I support the planners in the decision to grant this.
Thank you. Anybody else? So we'll go to a vote, but first I'll ask Tess just to clarify what we're voting for.
Just in line with the officer's recommendation.
So can I have a show of hands who support this planning application?
So that's unanimous.
Over to you, Trevor. Oh, planning appeals, just for information, isn't it?
Okay. Do we need to change over as officers?
Sorry, have we done planning's appeals, have we?
Yes.
Yeah. Just to note, no one of government. That was too quick for me.
Councillor Dale.
Yes, can I just say thank you to Kate for updating that planning enforcement that went to appeal. It seems to have been 6 or 7 months, but I'm very grateful, even not actually years, over a year. So thank you very much.
Right then, folks, I'm just going to change over the officers, so we're going to have a 5-minute recess. We'll come back at 1:45. Thank you very much. Can we knock the live feed Thank you. Welcome back to the Tynedale Local Area Council meeting on Tuesday the 15th of March. We're now on to item number 9, which is public question time. Do we have any public questions, Nicola?
No, Chair.
Thank you very much. In that case, we'll go on to item number 10, which is petitions. And we start off with receiving any new petitions, which is section 8, item 1, dangerous roads, Hexham. Have we got anyone bringing them in, Nicola?
No, Chair. This is just to report that this petition has been opened on the council's website, so it's active at the moment. So it's not been closed and has not yet been required for a report to be produced. It's just for members' information to let them know that this is a petition on the website that is relevant to the Tynedale area.
Thank you very much, Nicola. Thank you. Right, in that case, we'll go on to section B, which is consider reports and petitions previously received. And we have here Tara, no?
Tara Wright.
I remembered it, right. I didn't write that down, so that was in my age. That's quite good going to remember that. Tara, right, if you would like to speak on it, and then we'll have the officers will reply on this later. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tara Wright. Firstly, I want to thank you for accepting my petition and the report that we received back in November. So I got the report through to my email last week, and I want to let you know my feelings on it. I'd like to start by really, I want you to go to page 55 of your copy. I think it's page 55 in the report. And if you see the second photo down, you'll see a HGV driving alongside the pavement on Allendale Road. And on that exact photo, on the 10th of March, there was actually a really serious accident on Allendale Road. We've just had another one. And at night time, an excessive speeding driver hit 2 innocent drivers and wrote their cars off. There's still an active investigation, so I don't know any more details about that. I don't know conditions of the drivers. However, it was a horrendous accident, so I just want to make you aware that that was pretty much the exact point that them children are walking along that path, and that bit of wall there that is now no longer there. So yeah, if had that been a few hours earlier, there would have been children. Obviously, dog walkers walk along at the same time of night that accident happened. So this is the main route, obviously, for children to be walking along the road. And obviously, the driver mounted the path. Let me just catch up to where I was up to on my thing. Hexham Town Council put forward a blanket 20-mile-per-hour permanent speed limit throughout Hexham. This was put forward to try and stop confusion because all around Hexham you're going in and out of 20, 30 and 40-mile-per-hour zones, and people that are not paying attention can quite easily end up doing 40-mile-per-hour in a 20-mile-per-hour zone. If a child was hit at 40 in a 20, they would most likely die from their injuries, whereas being hit at 20 in a 20, they would most likely survive. We are now talking life or death. I know this. I'm the parent of a child that was hit by a car. The driver was doing 19 and a 30. This saved my child's life. He was in intensive care, and I never wish those days on any other parent, but reducing speed really does save lives. I talk from experience. I really ask that you seriously and urgently consider a blanket 20-mile-an-hour zone for the entirety of Hexham. This is not an option for the whole of Hexham, then at least Allendale Road would be a start. I do not believe for 1 second that people are taking any notice to the variable speed limit signs or the flashing signs. I feel that it's just too short of a zone for people to slow down to 20 miles per hour. They just can't be bothered for the size of the zone. If the zone was up from Southlands all the way down through Hexham, they would be more encouraged to slow right down, this potentially saving a pedestrian if an accident was to occur at 20 miles per hour. I've been made aware of a few accidents on Allendale Road. One particular incident happened in September at the Whetstone Bridge on Allendale Road. Junction, where a child was struck by a car after just returning back to school. It resulted in a trip to hospital. This was never reported to the police because it was a car versus pedestrian with just minor injuries. A lot of times that this has been reported to me, police haven't been involved, more so because the pedestrian's been seen at fault and have not wanted police involvement. So these are not being released into the statistics. So we're not getting to see this. And you also have to remember, a lot of these children that are walking these paths are only 9 years old now, that's going to HMS. With very limited road sense. We're crying out for a professional lollipop person on the stretch of road between Whetstone Bridge and Allendale Road. So I really ask that you look into the feasibility of this as a real option. When I first read the report, I initially felt elation that it had been listened to, but on rereading, I started to realise that actually all we've been promised was drawings out of the budget, and I'm really concerned that it's not enough. The words preliminary design work, possible solutions that might include and could be considered for inclusion in future local transport plans does not fill me with much hope or confidence, and it really feels non-committal. The report highlights serious issues with Allendale Road, and I really believe without the fast introduction of forcible speed restrictions or give-way markings or islands, this will not slow Allendale Road down. It highlights serious concerns with speeding and concerns with the paths and large vehicles passing each other. And I'm really concerned about, you know, if we don't do something quick, there's going to be a death on this road. We need to do something now and quickly, and I don't feel that the report shows that this is going to happen quickly, and I just need some confidence in that.
Thank you very much, Tara. I've spoke to, before I go over the officers, I actually spoke to Sergeant Kate Benson about the incident you're referring to yesterday, and I have the email here. There was a three-vehicle road traffic collision. And one driver was arrested for drink and driving, so it was a drink driving offence. Not that makes it any better or any worse, of course, but it just puts it out there a little bit. As for the lollipop person, my uncle Alec was a lollipop man down there for many a year. Mind you, he's that broad Scottish, nobody probably understood him. But I'll pass over now to Robin McCartney or Neil Snowden, whoever wishes to go first.
Sorry, I'm pleased you told us about the accident there, because we hadn't heard anything about that accident. So that's useful information. Yeah, that'd be good. That'd be good. With reference to the accident you made about the September there, that we found out later that the child actually crossed the road when the lights were on green. I think they were playing with them, looking at their mobile phone or listening to their phones. They were obviously distracted. We'll liaise with the school. It was the Catholic school over the road, where the child was a student of, and we've reminded them to remind, well, the same as Queen Elizabeth, to remind the students to take care all the time when they're crossing the road and what have you. The request for a school crossing patrol at Allendale Road, probably difficult because there's obviously a light controlled crossing there, and recruiting school crossing patrols is extremely difficult anyway. They work limited hours, little money, working in all weathers, and they're quite tiring. But because the light controlled crossing is there, it sort of takes the need away from that. We are obviously aware of the concerns there. Obviously, the HGVs, it's a huge concern, but it's very difficult to prevent the HGVs using that route. It's a strategic route. It needs to be open all the time for HGVs, timber transport and things like that. But we are going to have a look and see what is possible. If you're talking about traffic calming, it's quite a lot of expenditure involved in that. So we need to assess what's possible for a future programme. But if there is small scale measures such as signage, road markings, we might be able to look at things like that. You mentioned an island as well. Because of the width of the road, an island probably wouldn't be able to fit in there, but we'll look at all the options to see what might be possible to improve that situation. I've made reference to the school travel plan in the report as well. I was actually at a meeting at the school, the high school last week, and it did appear to be the case that a lot of the kids were using Tynedale Terrace now, rather than Allendale Road. Obviously using Allendale if they live in the estate opposite, but excuse me, that it seems to be having an impact, the school travel plan. So, there we are.
Thank you. Did you want to add anything, Robin, or just for answers to questions?
Yeah, I'll just deal with any questions that come from this. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. I was on the steering group of the, well, there was others, of course, obviously, on the Queen Elizabeth High School, and I would say at least 4 or 5 times we asked for information about traffic safety and that for the children walking to and from school. So I know the issues you're on about. Anyway, we'll open this up to members. So, Councillor Morfitt.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's very interesting that the 2 petitions on the agenda today, which I think are also the only 2 petitions to have come to Tynedale LAC in the last 10 months, both concern road safety in Hexham. So that suggests to me there's significant concerns over road safety among Hexham residents. It's great to see that the highways officers responded promptly to the petition, and it's no great surprise to anyone familiar with the Allendale Road to see that there is indeed a speeding problem, including at school times. I had a walk around the area yesterday, and it's obvious to me that the signage isn't up to the job. There's a few points where cars can enter the advisory 20 when lights flash zone around the school without even passing a flashing sign, and there's a few points where drivers encounter a 30 miles per hour sign while they're within the 20 when lights flash zone. So I concluded that the roads around the 3 schools, one of which is the Allendale Road, are just too complicated for an advisory 20 when lights flash scheme to ever operate successfully. And as we were just told by the lead petitioner, Tara, Hexham Town Council have been asking for a permanent 20 miles per hour speed limit across the whole of Hexham for many months. And based upon what I've seen, I think it would almost certainly help to solve the speeding problem on Allendale Road. When this proposal was discussed at a previous Tynedale LAC, Paul Jones told us that a permanent 20 mile an hour speed limit would be ignored if it wasn't commensurate with road conditions. And I'm sure he's right. And I'd therefore like to suggest that we start the process of making Hexham safer for vulnerable road users by making the conditions on Allendale Road commensurate with a permanent 20 mile an hour speed limit, and then replacing the unsuccessful advisory 20 when lights flash scheme with a permanent 20 mile an hour speed limit. If not across the whole of Hexham, then at least on Allendale Road. Let's not forget also that the Hexham LC Whip has identified the Allendale Road as a priority corridor for both cyclists and pedestrians, and that gives us a golden opportunity to slow motorised traffic down and make the road safer and more pleasant for vulnerable road users. I'll leave the details to the Highways Programme team, but I'd imagine that physical traffic calming measures such as horizontal or vertical deflections in combination with a protected cycle lane and improvements to the footways could achieve all of that, whilst also making the road conditions commensurate with a permanent 20 mile an hour speed limit. The money is available for all of this as well. There's 1.5 million in next year's capital programme for LC whips. There's 1.3 million for walking and cycling in the local transport plan, although only 222,000 of that is for improvements to walking and cycling infrastructure, the rest being for maintenance. There's also 1.75 million for safety schemes in the local transport plan, some of which is already allocated and some of which isn't. And there's 2.5 million in the capital programme for the maintenance of minor roads and footways, some of which hopefully could be used to resurface the footways on Allendale Road. So it is possible to make Allendale Road safer for vulnerable road users, but I believe the petition report falls short of promising anything. We're told that some preliminary design work will be undertaken, which will look at possible solutions that might include physical traffic calming measures and could be considered for inclusion in a future local transport plan. I agree with Tara that the petition report is far too non-committal, and also that there's no timeline to what it proposes. I therefore can't support this report unless I'm promised a second report that follows the design work and contains at least one proposal incorporating physical traffic calming measures along with an ambitious timeline for implementation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dale.
Thank you very much. Can I just say, I know that some councillors, County Councillor Kennedy, has been asking about this for a long time. I know when the school was being developed, the high school was being developed, there was no transport management plan that was put to members that actually included all members who had pupils going to that school, which included myself and my ward, which I think would have been helpful because we obviously have also some idea about what our pupils do from our villages that attend that school. I think, can I just say that the actual piece of road there has always been horrendous. I've always thought it was horrendous, and I remember my young children walking along there, and I've got a young child who's now nearly 50, and it was absolutely, it's always been dangerous because basically the pavement is too narrow. So before anybody considers doing anything about anything, you need to ensure that if that is what the school management plan says, that those children will walk to school via that route, that you actually have to manage the dangerous places. And one of the most dangerous places is that part of the pavement. And whether you can manage it outwards, there's no railings there, and I presume there's no room for any railings. And that's what you might say, but maybe you can be all geniuses and find some way of actually making that corridor safe so children don't go off the edge of the pavement, which they can do. And also keep the lorries and the big heavy vehicles and all cars off that part of the pavement. But until you actually do something with that piece of pavement, nothing is going to be safe there. Certainly none of the children or the pupils are going to be safe walking down there. So can I just ask that, agreeing with Councillor Morpeth, that you need to be very strategic about actually identifying the real issue. And my view is that it's the actual road and the width of the road that needs to be dealt with as a matter of urgency. And if we could see, as local councillors who actually have children who attend the high school, it would be helpful to have a look at the transport management plan. Because I have to ask parents, you know, when they complain about this, that and the other, I have to respond, and if I haven't got the school's transport management plan, it's not very helpful. So thank you, but there's one urgent point, and that is certainly the actual pavement itself.
Thank you. I probably should have asked if you wanted to say anything on Councillor Morford's words before, and of course now Councillor Dale's, before I go on to the next one. Councillor Kennedy.
Thank you, Chair. So I've represented that area. This is my 19th year for representing that area. So always been one of the major things in Hexham has been the safety of children going to that school. Obviously the school has been upgraded and enhanced, so there's now even more children going there, so the flow of children is even greater than it was previous. So what's been done over the years? Well, you know, we've raised it many times about the width of the pavements, but it's always come back that the constraints with regards to the land, because there's a big drop off into a small stream, which you saw in those photographs where that big lorry is. So the pavements are quite narrow. The roads are narrow anyway, so we're constrained as to what can you do to remodel the road and the pavements. We've always been told probably nothing down the bottom end next to the Fox, and I probably agree with that. I think that is serious constraints there. It is not. There is no easy solution to resolve that there. So what's happened over the years? Well, certainly, you know, I was the campaigner who along with others, we got the initial part-time 20 mile an hour in round that school, which is again has been enhanced. So that is part-time, but also that there is 2 speed measurement signs coming down the Allendale road from Allendale way around the Southland junctions and further down. So there's measures in there, and also on Causey Hill as that joins the school. So there's been a number of control measures gone in. But has it been enough, and has it influenced? I believe it has had some influence. However, again, looking at the evidence, recognising that we have more children going to that school in that area now than ever before, it's not enough. You know, we've tried, we've put things in, and it is just not enough. So, you know, I'm a member of the town council along with two other people on here, and we have over these last few years have been asking for 20 mile an hour to be put into the town. And you know, there's been parts in the town centre and other bits around, again around the high school, in the local streets. There's 20 mile an hour there, and then this part-time business on the Allendale road. The town council has come to the conclusion, after much debate, that there has to be a single solution of 20 mile an hour across the town, instead of having this 20, 30 and all sorts of stuff going on. It's causing confusion. If we can have a 20 mile an hour, which went all the way up to, say, Southlands, which is where, you know, where it starts to come down the hill, and some sort of nipping of Allendale Road, because it's a bit broader there and the pavements are fairly wide. If the road could be nipped there, so you knew that once you entered or exited that area, that you were now entering a controlled 20 mile an hour part of the town, I do believe that could be part of a solution. But I look at these proposed actions, you know, and I look at D, which is saying, can we clear the footpaths and cut back overhanging vegetation? Now, that should just be happening anyway. You know, to say that should be one of the proposed actions, well, that should just happen anyway as a matter of course. We shouldn't just be waiting until the bushes are hanging over and people are having to walk on the pavements or on the pathway. That's not good enough. The road safety, I'm also worried about the business of saying some preliminary design work that potentially could be looking at future local LTPs, because so basically we're just saying we're going to do some desk work, we're going to tidy the pavements and cut the hedges back, but basically that's it for at least another 12 months. Well, to me, that's just not acceptable. We've got, you know, looking at the evidence, looking at the number of children going to that school, it is time now for something to happen. And just doing desktop exercise on a piece of paper and saying we could do this and do that, and saying that's all we're going to get this year, is completely unacceptable. You know, the town council asked for that 20 mile an hour. I think it's time to do something that achieves that, at least in there. At the moment, it's part-time, and that means it's just advisory. It needs to be much more permanent, and for people to understand and really try and drive a culture that when you come into this area, you're down to 20. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, thank you, Councillor Kennedy. This road, this road is basically on the boundary between myself and Councillor Kennedy's western edge, but my boundary and the eastern edge of his boundary. And it is a bad road. I mean, you can see by the photos it's a bad road. There's a path on one side and not on the other. And, you know, you can't see it from this photograph. That is a big drop. The old tax office used to be there. Don't know whether you worked there, did you, Councillor Kennedy? And so it isn't very good. So what do you have to do? Well, you either approach the traffic or you approach the school children. The traffic's going too fast. The school children, you know, there should be a safe walking route, and that's not the way. And we all know Tynedale Terrace and down through the onto the road by near where the police station is, and coming in across that way. And a lot of them people do that now, and I'm pleased to see someone said before that there's a lot more walking that way than there used to be. But we've either got to instruct the school that that's what's got to happen, or we have to slow the traffic down. Or to be fair, we could do a combination of both. And Councillor Kennedy is right. We have been trying to get this for, I don't know exactly how long, but I bet it's 3 or 4 years, and possibly a lot more than that, to get a 20-mile-an-hour zone. You know, that is actually an important road. You said that yourself, Neil. That is an important road for traffic. So it's difficult. You can't just remove HGV vehicles. And, you know, and it's not the only place we have problems. It wasn't that long since I talked about a problem with you, myself, over at Acomb, similar sort of problem. But really, somebody has to take responsibility. We can't just play Russian roulette with people's lives. And we may not have had a one yet, and I hope we never ever get a serious accident, or heaven help, anything worse than that. But it's our right and responsibility, I think, that we do prevention, you know, so do something beforehand rather than trying to be reactive after the event. So, you know, I was agreeing with a 20-mile-an-hour zone years ago. I'm still agreeing with a 20-mile-an-hour zone, certainly in that area. You know, I know we have difficulties of all the little streets that go off that, but, you know, basically that's our job to solve those problems, and hopefully we can solve those problems. And, you know, maybe representation, more representation, should I say, to the school about encouraging students to walk a different route as well would help. But, you know, kids are kids, and it's quicker that way. So, you know, what can I say? That's the way they take it. Councillor Shaw.
Yeah, I mean, this has been discussed for a lot of years now. You know, I remember even in Tynedale Council's days, we did talk about this road, and there's no doubt the number of heavy traffic on that road has obviously increased over the years, and buses and lorries and everything else. And with the numbers of people, I appreciate what, you know, people are saying they could go the other route and walk to school, but the best will in the world, the parents are going to go up that footpath. You know, Councillor Dale is absolutely right. That footpath is far too narrow, and with the big vehicles down there, you know, I can understand why the parents are very concerned, because every day they probably feel they're taking their lives in hand, and the children at risk, you know. And our job as a council, you know, as a councillors, is to try and do everything we can to make life safer for our residents and their children. And I think this is an example where a 20-mile-an-hour sign would be a huge would be a huge improvement. I've got 20-mile-an-hour, maybe I'm fortunate to have this, but I've got 20-mile-an-hour in most of the villages which I represent down the road at Hayden Bridge. And I can tell you all that that 20-mile-an-hour signs does definitely encourage people to slow down when they see 20 mile an hour. I appreciate a lot of people who live locally might think it doesn't matter because they obviously, you know the area. But that is an extremely narrow bit between the Fox Junction right to where the school turn-off is. There's a lot of residential houses there as well, and there's a lot of traffic. And I think we have a duty to treat this with a bigger priority and get behind the Hexham members and get behind the lead petitioner, and the very fact they've got 689 whatever it is people on, I know it's that's the other one, but there's, you know, there's a big demand to get this done, and we need to treat this with a bigger priority. This is an awkward area which we know needs attention, and it's no good just producing reports which effectively is delaying, a bit like what Councillor Moffat was saying earlier. We need to act now, and not when somebody gets killed or somebody gets injured. Let's treat this with some more priority.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sharp. Councillor Fairless-Hagan.
Hello, thank you. To chime in with a lot of the comments that my fellow councillors have said. I've not been a councillor that long, but it's starting to feel a bit like Groundhog Day already. We asked for things at the town council that were our highways wish list, the main one being the 20-mile-an-hour zone, pedestrianisation, and a traffic person at this road, all of which have now sort of been denied. This is a very complicated road. I'm a resident of this road, as well as a parent of children on both the Catholic school and the high school, and it's now a mega school. There are 2,000 children spilling out every day, and they're not all going to go down Tynedale Terrace. It's an incredibly narrow road. I like the work that's been done on the paths further up. That's fabulous, and I know there are logistical reasons that it hasn't been done further down. But, you know, I'm pleading for something like rumble strips, chicanes, a giveaway, anything that you can come up with that's concrete. And, you know, I would like to see, you know, the data's fabulous. It's spot on, it's specific, fabulous. But everything else seems very, very vague. As Councillor Moffat said, there's no what, there's no when, and it's urgent. I got involved, I mean, Torres Petitions, fabulous. I got involved after one of the children was hit when I was still governor of the school in September. And yes, she may have been distracted. It was the first week of the new schools opening, the very first week, and it was our worst fears realised that this child was glanced, admittedly at a crossing, which is maybe why we need a traffic officer there as well. I just would like to see something very firm here, and it's not been put in front of me, and I'm a little disappointed. So please come up with something. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Riddle.
Yeah, I probably need to speak as well as portfolio holder because, you know, my name's on the petition. You know, I'm going by officer advice here when I've signed off this report for this committee, but clearly, you know, members are of very much of a mind that we need to do something and do it quickly. You know, we cannot just magic money up out of the air to do these sort of things. So if it is the wish of this committee that they really do want something to happen, I haven't actually signed off all the LTP yet. And, you know, there is an opportunity that we could take something out in Hexham and put something in. So, you know, I'll give you that as a olive branch. You know, but we can't just spend money that we haven't got. And, you know, I don't want any child to be injured. You know, that would be the last thing I would want. And, you know, it has been a problem for a long time. And, you know, as far as the 20-mile-an-hour zone goes, I have spoke to Paul Jones about it, Councillor Kennedy. His advice is that, you know, it wouldn't be taken heed of if it was all over Hexham. We are rolling the 20-mile-an-hour programme out around schools this year. There's only a handful that won't be done, and those are the ones that basically can't be done or which would be very difficult to do. So, you know, we are doing things, but, you know, it's not a bottomless pit. You know, I've got calls for similar sorts of things just this week in the southeast of the county as well, where there's been a child unfortunately injured by a motor vehicle.
Thank you very much, Councillor Riddle. Obviously, it's as councillors, it's up to us to look after the children of the town, and if we're getting lots of issues, then we have to approach that. I'm pleased to say that you're willing to have a look through your purses in the office and see if you can find any pennies to do this. That would be good. You know, we do have money for schemes outside schools, and that's great. And a lot of schools are taking advantage about this. But although this is not outside a school, it is a road that leads to the school, and so it should really be classified as part of the arterial route from the heart of the school, if you like. That's very NHS there. And I do think that, you know, we can't just sort of say that once they've left the surrounds of the school, 50 yards away, 100 yards away, that's just finished. Because that is a key issue tied into the school. Other places in Hexham, you know, I've gone for the 20-mile-an-hour zone in Hexham, by the way, but other places in Hexham, if you decide to do a, you know, bit meal, part meal, whatever the expression is, aren't tied into the schools. That particular road is, and so I think it's as important there as it is outside the school. I've had one more hand up, so I'll go to Councillor Dale.
Sorry, can I just mention to Councillor Riddle as the portfolio holder, I think all of us as members actually think the importance of is road safety for our children. And I think where we've got accident black spots, I mean, we discussed this the last meeting where I've got an accident black spot, something is being done now. But if we have a notable accident black spot, and this area has always been for a long, long time, the difference is actually now we've got a lot of more children, but we've also got a lot of younger children too. And surely somewhere you can look through your criteria, look at the LTP, look at what is in there that is not an accident black spot, and discuss it with members and just say, can this go back a year? And please try and find the funding for this area, because it hits all of us. Councillor Morfitt's got children there. I think everybody along here, this row, will have children there. Everybody, apart from one or two members, all have children who go to that school. So it is important. So can I ask you to go back and have a look? I'm sure if you want us to look at the LTP again, we're quite grown up in this committee, we'll have a look and recognise that we all have a responsibility to our children. This is a dangerous area and it needs to be looked at, and we need to find the money now. So can I ask you, Councillor Riddle, if you'd like to go and have a look?
Thank you very much. I think Councillor Riddle's already said that's exactly what he is going to do. Make it a quick one, please, Councillor Fairless-Egan.
It was to chime in with something you said, actually, Councillor Sesford, about arterial roads. And I completely agree. It's not just the immediate ones around the school. And what's happened with this site especially is that a school has moved from east to west, and it's even more concentrated in the west. And you're having families that are 2 miles away walking in, cycling in potentially, being dropped off across town now. So that's made it even bigger. And it would be great to have those routes into school made safe, whether it be cycling, walking, and there's not that across town to the school as well.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kennedy, keep
Just
it
very,
short,
very
please.
quickly. So I have read that in Scotland, who have got devolved powers, that they are looking at introducing 20 mile an hour across all towns in Scotland, out with. And I understand Wales are also looking at that as well. So I think that just drives an absolute horse and cart through the argument that changing a town from 30 to 20 doesn't work. It does work, because it's about people. It's about drivers who drive cars, and about culture and behaviours. And if those people start driving at 20 mile an hour, if you're in a queue and there's 5 cars and the car in front of you starts driving at 20 mile an hour in a town, the other 4 cars have to do the same, because they can't get around you. So it can work. I just don't buy this whole, like, people don't take any notice. I just don't buy it, because why would Scotland be doing it? Why is Scotland intending to do it? And why is Wales looking to do it?
Thank you very much. And having drove to Edinburgh Airport with 68 a few times recently, I think I've been through every one of those 20 mile an hour towns. Right, boys, you've got an awful lot to take in there, so give it your best shot. Thank you very much.
I'll take this. It's a very, very difficult matter to deal with, road safety, especially when we're talking about children being hit, killed, seriously injured. But from my point of view, stepping back from it, harping back to what Councillor Riddle has said, we've got to try and work out which schemes we take forward and which schemes get looked at. And the main driver is road safety. So the first thing we do is we look at the accident statistics for that area. And we don't look at all the accident statistics because there's too many. So we don't actually, the police do not record the near misses. And I accept there are thousands of near misses, and there are thousands of near misses everywhere. But we do have the collection of 15, 20 years worth of accidents that we discuss with the police. So we know where they are, we monitor them. Obviously we want to take them on board as soon as we can. But when it comes to any single scheme, the first thing we actually look at is the accident statistics. What's happened where? Okay, so we do take that in, and it's the first priority. So that determines the road safety aspect of it. In Northumberland, I'll start just using rough figures to give you an idea. In Northumberland, there's about 500 accidents every single year. Now that's come down significantly over the last 15 years, but it's predominantly in slight accidents, not in the serious and the critical accidents. Vast bulk of that 500 are happening on unrestricted roads. They're not happening on 30 mile per hour roads or 20 mile per hour roads or 40. The vast bulk are happening on 60s. If I take that a little bit further and then start linking safety to speed, so that's 500 a year across Northumberland, we then start analysing the accident statistics to work out whether we go ahead with a scheme. When you start looking at the safety aspect of that, nationally, only 20% of all these reported accidents are speed related. They are because the driver's distracted, they're because of environmental measures, ice, rain, whatever it is, arguments in the car, could be lots of different reasons. 20% nationally are down to speed. So automatically linking speed to accidents in a specific scheme, in a specific area, you've got to tear that apart and actually look at what's going on, and that is very difficult when you're in amongst it and it's your town and it's your village. It's not as difficult for someone like me because I'm stepping back, looking at it from a purely engineering point of view, technical point of view. How many accidents? Where have what's caused them? In Northumberland, it's not 20%. In Northumberland, it's nearer 10 to 15% of all reportable accidents, casualty accidents, are only down to speeding. So that actually drives how I look at each of these schemes. I'm going to go further then and link on to your 20 miles per hour. Right? 20 miles per hour works. It's proven to work. The concept of 20 miles per hour reduces accidents. We've shown it nationally, everywhere, that if you, for every mile per hour you reduce speed, you reduce the number of accidents. When you're dealing with the UK, when you're dealing with the pilot towns and regions that are doing the demonstrations, that works, okay? When you then start boiling it down to individual patches, then how does that work? Saying that introducing 20 miles per hour therefore reduces accidents, and it starts going a bit awry there. You mentioned Scotland and Wales. The reason it works in Scotland and Wales because they've gone, we'll cover the whole region. I have not found that document yet that actually shows the linkages to say we're doing this because of these road safety issues or we're going to reduce accidents by X. It's a global concept which supports the whole concept of 20 miles per hour. So I have looked at Wales, I have looked at Scotland. What I'm finding in Scotland is there are a number of local authorities in Scotland that are now saying they can't afford it, just can't afford to do that. They do not have the money to put that across all the regions. So we're looking into that. So when you start then drilling down to, am I going to put a 20 mile per hour zone in? And you know actually only 20% or 10% of accidents are caused by speeding. So is this 20 mile per hour zone in this location going to reduce accidents? It's a little bit more difficult than that, so we have to look at it a bit further. And we go back to the accident statistics. So it does become a little bit more of a problem. You then go back to the Royal Society of Prevention of Accidents guidance. This is the Royal Society of Prevention of Accidents guidance nationally that says you should only be putting them in residential areas. You should not be putting them on through routes. They should be self-enforcing, which means that you need to make sure either it's a fully residential area and you've got sufficient cars and things going on in that area that force people to drive at that, or you have to put in very, very expensive physical measures to force people to drive at that. Once you add all that together and the fact that only 20% or 10% of your accidents are speed related, you've got to start saying, is there another way of doing this? Or you take it away from that whole road safety concept and say, actually, culturally, from a community point of view, we feel safer in a 20 mile per hour zone. That's a completely different argument, right? And I'm fully behind all that. What I struggle with is in an individual scheme saying we're going to put a 20 miles per hour zone in because it's going to save accidents, because it's going to reduce speed. 20 mile per hour zones reduce speeds by 1.5, maybe 2 miles per hour. And that's kind of not what we're talking about in these areas when we're looking at speeds. So if we can get back to Allendale Road again, once I've considered all that, we are going to look at it. It's a very bad road. It's historically been a very bad road. You see the photographs of those two HGVs going back and you think, poof, right, okay, but it's a strategic route, so we can't take those off. We've built this super school there, 1,100 students coming out, and we went along and witnessed the students coming out so that we could see where they were all going. And I have to say, the vast bulk of those students, because of the way the entrance is now and because of the way they're forced to come out, they do come out and go down Tynedale. So yes, there will be students that go wherever those students want to go, and there always will be, because they don't want to follow the crowd. And there is an argument for maybe not pushing it too much, because obviously the school is thinking that the children need to make these kind of decisions themselves. They need to work out what is safe and what's not safe. So it is in the travel plan. We're trying to encourage the school to make sure they go down Tynedale, because we don't want them going down Allendale. We've got the accidents. You've then mentioned speeding, right? Frequently said there's speeding on Allendale Road. The test results there that we've carried out at various locations indicate that there are some concerns. But in comparison to an awful lot of roads that are considered to be speeding roads, I think the average, I'm paraphrasing now, but the average speeds in some of those sites were about 31 miles per hour, the average speed. And the 85 percentiles, which is 85% of vehicles, is below 37 miles per hour, something like that. And in some of the locations where we're getting those are actually beyond the boundaries of the 20 miles per hour. They're in the kind of almost like semi-rural exit to Hexham, where the 85 percentiles are 37 miles per hour. Now, if you're driving in that kind of rural 30 mile per hour area, then depending on who you are, you might feel safe, you might feel unsafe, but you probably won't notice the difference between driving at 30 and driving at 35 miles per hour in some of those rural areas. I'm not saying it's safe or unsafe, I'm just saying in that kind of area, we would have a conversation with the police to say, look, this is what we're getting. It's not obvious from those results that that would require physical measures for those speeds in those locations. You then come closer into the town, and the speeds closer into the town, certainly around the school, seem more reasonable. I'm not saying they're perfect, I'm not saying, I mean, the vast majority of people are proven to speed through 30 miles per hour zones nationally, right? And that's just fact. So we will look at it, but there's nothing coming from those speed results that say we must go in to do anything. So you start adding all this up, at which point I then have to take a back step and say, well, okay, it doesn't really matter what I think. I am taking on board the fact that there are so many people and the community at large is saying this is a dangerous street. We need to do something. So we do need to come at it from different angles. But from my point of view, some of the things that have been said need to be just broken down a little bit more and considered in more detail. And then come back to it. But we certainly don't just stick it on the shelf there and don't worry about it and we'll come back in 2 years. It's just a long process for us to go through to get the approvals and go through all those different stages. And we'll see what comes out. And I'm not prejudging anything there. We'll just see what comes out of the designs when the design team, the road safety design team, actually have a look at it. And some of them are, you know, those two HGVs, you know, I wouldn't be happy on that road with those two HGVs going past. So I'm happy to take any questions on that.
Thank you very much. Well. Does anybody else any further questions for Rick? Councillor Fairless again.
Sorry, yes, I would agree. Looking at the data, it does seem to suggest it's not just a speed issue. I completely agree. I pored over the data quite a while this weekend, and it does seem to me that they do slow down by that section. I completely understand that. The 20 mile an hour zone to me is more of a mindset. It's a small town, people can be seen. I mean, it's very obvious when people are going above 20 miles an hour if you're just watching as a pedestrian from the road. So I think it's more of a safety mindset around what is a new school that we're looking for. And I'm glad you're, you know, going back to the report, and it seems to be, yes, yes, I will remain to see. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Riddle, do you want to come back?
Yeah, I think I should really. I mean, you know, the 20-mile-an-hour issue is a different issue really to the original petition. You know, the other thing that I would like to say is that, you know, we are looking at how the LTP programme is going to work, because clearly the way the LTP has been set up at the moment, it raises people's aspirations and it raises the public's aspirations. And you know, just because something just didn't make it last year doesn't mean it's at the top of the list for next year. And there's something wrong there really fundamentally. So we're going to look at perhaps doing or trying to set up a process where we have a 3-year sort of rolling LTP programme. So, you know, things that are important to people should be able to creep up. I just want to be clear with Robin and Neil what we are actually going to do here now, because, you know, there's been a lot of concern. We've got to take notice of it. You know, we're going to go away and look at some design things. But, you know, I think we've got to say what we're going to come back to this committee with, because, you know, we need to be accountable to the members, and, you know, that includes myself. I'm not passing the buck here. You know, we've had an ask and we've got to respond to it. So can we say that could be for the next area committee, or is that too soon? Over to you.
This is my first petition meeting, so this is quite interesting. I've done one local area committee meeting. As far as I'm aware, the process would be that we've highlighted that we want the design team to go off and do work, so we will put a brief together for that work. We'll need to confirm that it is or isn't in this year's LTP, but I'm considering it's in the LTP, the fact that we're suggesting in the petition report that we're going to do it. So we'll send the brief out. We'll need to get a timescale from the design office, because of the volume of work that they actually have on, how and when they can fit it in, and at that point would be the best time to come back and say which meeting we could then maybe aim for to report on.
Yeah, thank you. Clearly, all the interest with the members here is not something we want to sit on for a while. I would be happy sitting on for a while. I realise obviously there's certain things take time, and I know the petitioner herself probably won't be wanting this to sit very long. Can I ask then, in that case, John, you may wish to liaise with me and we can get it in as soon as we possibly can, and I'll liaise with Nicola and see if we can find a slot for it, because best not to let it drop too long.
I won't let it drop, but, you know, I've got to give officers time to put the brief together and get the work done before we can bring something meaningful back.
Yeah, okay. Well, we'll do that then. Thank you very much, Tora. I remember the second name this time. Thank you very much for coming here, and hopefully, you know, it is progress. I think the discussion here was very good, very helpful, and basically all together as well. So, you know, you have the members, especially the members in the local area, on your side. And not that there's anything wrong with the members a little bit further out, of course, because we all have, you know, they have residents' children who are going to that school as well. But the process is starting, and hopefully it'll keep going to a positive result. Thank you very much.
Chair, what are we doing for the recommendation?
Recommendation. Well, the recommendation is we're going to progress the officer's design report as soon as possible, and the portfolio holder is going to liaise with the chair and get something back to the TLAC as soon as possible to let people know what exactly is going on. Oh, sorry, to let people know about the progress. Is everybody happy with that? Yeah? Okay.
Just obviously there was the proposed actions, A, B, C, D as well. I don't know whether you want to comment on those.
Page is it?
Thank you.
Okay. So I'll read through the proposed actions, and let's just see if they fit in nice with what we're saying here.
I think what you said, Chair, is in addition to those.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay, I'll go through them. The funding has already been allocated to carry out some preliminary design work, which is what Robin said before. They could be considered in future local transport plan programme. And they could include physical traffic count measures. Remind the school they need to publicise and encourage the use of preferred walking routes, which has been managed by a couple of people. A copy of the petition report before the Road Safety Unit in Northumbria Police. That will be done, yes? Yes? Yeah. And D, concerns regarding the clearing of the footpath and the cutting back of overhanging vegetation and thorns has already been addressed. We will request neighbourhood services to ensure that Allendale Road is regularly inspected to ensure the maximum footway width is available for use. So I think all of those points were covered. I just think it's the urgency of thing that we want to add with this. Councillor Dale.
Yeah, can I just say that I think we all actually recognised, and Councillor Riddle recognised too, that we needed to find further funding so we could take this forward quickly. And I think that was the big thing. It wasn't about just the design and the work, it was about the funding. So I think we should add that into the recommendation, please.
Okay, well, I mean, Councillor Riddle...
Could I have a seconder for that, please?
Councillor Riddle did actually mention that. I don't think it's a need to be proposed and second for that. You are taking that for. It is your responsibility to look for extra funding.
I can't, we can't just put funding forward on the hoof at an area council meeting, I don't believe.
Can I just...
It's been noted. It will be taken forward, but as Councillor Riddle says, we can't just make a proposal that money will be spent.
Can I just say that we can make a recommendation, as Councillor Riddle said, he would look at the LTP, he was the one who said it, so we could make a recommendation that the funding of further work is looked at and come back. I mean, I could have a seconder, and I'm sure we could put that, I could put that to the council as a motion.
I hear what you're saying, Councillor Dale. To me, as far as I'm concerned, that commitment's already been made by Councillor Riddle, and I don't think we need to take it any further than that.
You second it, go on.
Okay.
Sorry, can I make that as a...
Sorry, Councillor Dale, thank you. Right, I've heard what you said and I've made a decision. Right, Councillor Riddle has already said that he's going to take it forward and look for extra funding. I don't see, how we can commit to say he's got to find extra funding.
No.
I've known Councillor Riddle for a while. If he says he's going to look for extra funding is exactly what he's going to look for.
Can I just say it should be in the recommendations, please? That's all I'm asking for, and I'm sure that somebody would second me. And
I've heard that. I've heard that, Councillor Dale. I've made a statement on that already. Okay, thank you very much. Right then. Sorry.
Order.
Thank you very much, boys. You can stay. You can leave. Right. Okay. Right then, Councillor Dale, thank you. We're moving on now. Right, Section C, receive any updates on petitions for which a report was previously considered?
None.
None. Okay, right then. You're over there. We're going on to item number 11, local services issues, and we have Stephen Wardle and Andy Fisher. Who's going to be first on the ball? Fight among yourselves. Stephen, you're going to be first.
Thanks, Chair. David sends his apologies, but he has provided a brief note. Everybody will be pleased to hear, so I'll run through that now. On the neat side, winter works continue at a rate we'd expect. Since the last lack, we've experienced a mild winter period. This has helped our teams recover some ground we lost to Storm Arwen. Excuse me. We continue to work 28-hour working weeks during the winter period. We've progressed through scheduled work. It's been difficult to progress through the scheduled work, but we have ultimately been successful. We are on target to complete all scheduled winter work tasks. Please alert David at your earliest convenience if you believe any requested work has not been completed. We are in the final stages of preparation for the upcoming grass cutting season. All grass cutting equipment has either been serviced or is scheduled to be serviced. We may be cutting grass in the next 2 weeks depending on ground conditions, and we are now recruiting to seasonal grounds maintenance positions for this year. Weed control activities will be undertaken in-house again this year, and we will return to the use of blue dye this year as it was well received pre-pandemic. It's business as usual as far as street cleansing is concerned. But we do anticipate and hope that we will see the increased footfall that we experienced during the pandemic due to staycations, etc. We hope they will reduce this year, and that should ease the pressure on our cleansing teams. Onto the waste side, it's business as usual for residual and recycling collections. We are still seeing elevated tonnages due to COVID. We put this down to many people now working from home and generating waste there rather than at their workplace. Due to the rate of housing growth in recent years, the waste services will see additional investment this year. We will receive 2 additional refuse collection vehicles and crews. Work is underway to evaluate existing demands on the service and plan routes to ensure they are deployed in the most efficient way possible. Garden waste collections have started. Increase in housing and customer numbers have meant additional tweaking of rounds have been required to accommodate that increase. Initial take-up for the service is high and the scheme remains as popular as ever. A little bit of extra information for the LAC. The glass trial has been extended by 12 months. Presentation rates and yields remain encouraging in most areas. And finally, a food waste collection trial is currently being planned. A special collection vehicle is required, which we must hire in for the duration of the trial. Members will be provided with more information on the trial when plans are finalised. That's the end of the update, Chair.
Thank you very much, Stephen. If I may just ask a couple of questions first, please. I'm pleased to see, well, in one way, I'm pleased to see the glass recycling has been extended for 12 months, a further 12 months. But of course, that leads you to another question, which is, when is a report going to come to Council and a decision made? Because it's been going on for, I don't know, 18 months now. I'm not 100% certain, but I'll guess around about 18 months. So that'll be 2.5 years. And I know myself, and I'm sure others have been asked, great, you know, I'm pleased that you're doing this glass recycling, but when is it going to be expanded to the whole county? But of course, we won't know that until a report's been made.
It's a very good question, Chair. Basically, this is all linked to government funding and the Environment Bill that will come in. What we've got to be careful to do as an authority is not overcommit. If we did roll this out county-wide, it would be an enormous expense and we wouldn't be entitled to any funding for that. So it's all gathering information. It's gone very well so far, very encouraging, good yields. So that's why we're doing that. We can produce reports on yields at any time, but it is going well, but it's all linked to funding.
Well, I mean, that's a lot clearer now that it's linked in the funding. I wasn't 100% aware of that before. I'm going to ask one question and then I'll put it over to other people. Weed spraying back to the blue dials, which I know, I've been told were quite effective 2 or 3 years ago, whenever it was, or last use. I do know we had a trial using non-glyphosates in the weed spraying, and I'm aware that it was more costly and more time consuming because we had to send people out, I forget what it was, something like twice as often to do the weed spraying and all that. Have we had a result on that? Is it still being trialled? Are we binned it or what? What was the situation with the trials there?
Thanks, Chair. No, the trial has ended. It was for a period of time. Some of the products were very poor, so we did stop them because it was, you know, it was throwing good money after bad, and it was bad for the residents in that area. Others performed a little better than we expected. We are basically, there's a report almost written, and it's going to go into the summer grounds maintenance report. That's going to go, I think, next month. So it's the results are in there. But basically, a mixed bag, but the report will confirm all.
Okay, look forward to the report and thank you very much. Councillor Stewart.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. Good to see you again for so long. 2 things there. Bird nesting season. When, do you know the dates for that? Because it seemed to have a long time. And
we're in it now. It starts from March and it runs through the end of August. So that I think you're getting around to tree works there and the recovery from Arwen, and it does impact on those. So that the teams will now move to reinstatement works. So initially made certain areas safe, high footfall, continue with all tree works as far as we could, brought in up to 10 contractor teams to help us because we only have 3 of our own teams. We knew we wouldn't get the work done in time. We'd have to stop at some point. So we believe we've made everywhere safe that we can make safe at the moment. But there are a lot of reinstatement works you'll have seen where there's a tree stump, there's a tree trunk lying. They're not going to hurt anybody, but they don't look great. Causes problems for grass cutting and all sorts of things. So we now move on to that, and then when it comes to the winter one, we can get back into plantations and things like that, which have hardly been touched, to be honest. We'll start on that. Long way to go with that.
Cheers, thank you. The second for me, Chairs, food waste. I would love to have a discussion with the people to see if product can be part of that scheme.
Okay, noted, councillor. Yeah, that is in the early stages. It's basically all being discussed at the moment. We haven't actually sourced a vehicle yet to do that.
Shy Ben's getting out.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So that'll be kebabs then. Councillor Riddle.
You know, over this period, but also just to reiterate the point about this environment bill and the legislation that's passing through, because what we have done is we've done the glass recycling trial. We've extended that. I think it was £40,000 extra. We actually in the extension, we've bought some extra bins because we had capacity on the wagons to do that. So we did that. But we've also about to roll out the food waste trial. And again, it is to gather robust evidence so that, you know, when this bill is passed, we can say, well, this is how much money we're going to need for Northumberland. Because, you know, potentially these things are millions of pounds. And if we do them too quickly, we won't get the money, that's for certain. So, you know, we've got to wait the environment bills there and, you know, follow the track. The thing about cutting trees back, etc., and roadside hedges, it's something that was high on my agenda. Is it something I wanted highway teams to actually tackle? And, you know, whether that meant being tougher with farmers and landowners, I don't care. You know, the thing is, we've got to get the roads safe, and I've had lots of complaints particularly from wagon drivers, about having to drive in the middle of the road because they're smashing mirrors that cost £500 a shot. It's quite right that we have now entered the bird nesting season. I think 1st of March is the magic date. But if there are specific safety issues, then trees and hedges can still be addressed, but it has to be on a one-by-one risk assessed basis. But, you know, it doesn't actually mean that we can't do anything, but it has to be a real safety issue.
Thank you. You mentioned the environmental bill, which of course Stephen mentioned before. Do we have any idea when it all maybe? How long is a piece of string? Probably, is it?
I believe it's passing through Parliament now, but how long it'll take, you know. Particularly with what's going on at the moment.
Well, I thought I'd ask. I didn't think I'd get much success. So, Councillor Dale.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that report, and thank you for all the trees you've cut down and cut up everything else. Can I just ask you about the glass collection scheme? Because, as Councillor Riddle said, it's obviously a new government legislation coming out. But have you had the economic, but also the carbon footprint impact assessment on what value it is? Because I think probably in towns it's probably easier, but when you're actually going out into big rural areas, the cost, because those actual big machines that are there collecting, I don't know how you're doing it, John, so I don't know, but it would be quite interesting to find out what the impact assessment is for the, you know, I don't know if you've managed that.
My understanding is that they're doing that work on carbon footprints. My understanding is that work is being done on the carbon footprints.
Thank you. I mean, what we don't want to do is be land up with a bill that we can't afford to manage, because, you know, through the government legislation, they tell us to do things, and then we're going to be hit with an enormous bill. But, you know, that's happened before.
Stephen, would you like to come back?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It is very complicated, and as Councillor Riddle said, it is being discussed in Parliament at the moment. You know, these things can draw out for a long time. What we are hoping for, don't know what's going to happen, is, you know, it needs to be practicable, it needs to be sensible. Sending a vehicle out to Kielder to collect a tiny amount of, so you know where I'm coming from, so that it all feeds into the system. So we'll have to wait to see what hand we're dealt.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kennedy, I believe you had your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a couple of things. Well, first of all, thank you, John, just for clarifying the business of the bird nesting season and the clearing of dangerous trees, because I've had a couple of contacts on that. So that's cleared that. Just a couple of things from me. One is gully cleaning, which is, I know it's a regular thing that comes up, is like, you know, how are we going to get through the gullies, because there's quite a lot of them like filled, because they just get full with like dirt and stuff, and can those be cleaned out? And what system do we have to ensure that they are cleaned on a regular basis? And also just around the Queen Elizabeth High School, Hexham, we've had huge amounts of excess water. I'll not say flooding, because maybe not flooding, but it's certainly a huge amounts of excess water that's been going down the Allendale Road as runoff comes off the new hard standing of the playing fields. It has affected a couple of houses on the Allendale Road, but also on the side, on the other side, on the western side, where there's the walkway, that just becomes now a small stream. When it rains, and it's never done that before. But again, you know, I've seen it run off some of these hard standing, and it's just that the water's not penetrating the hard standing anymore. It's just like pouring off and creating a stream on what was a pathway into the school. And I was just wondering if there's any observations on that.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure Andy will answer that in just a second, but is anybody else to Stephen first? No? Okay, Andy, if you would like to do your presentation and maybe take Councillor Kennedy's questions afterwards.
With regard to inspections, the highways inspections have been carried out as per statutory duty and are all up to date within the Tynedale area, and the maintenance teams on the ground are repairing any actual defects. The number of defects has again decreased in the last couple of months, which the highways inspectors are picking up, and we are pleased to say we feel the mild winter has helped out with us to now for actionable defects on the roads. Tynedale area has just received a brand new hot box, which will enable us to carry out more repairs within the working day. I think it's a bigger capacity than the one we had before, so they don't have to go back to the quarries during the day and get more tar. The gully wagons are still working around the route, picking up any complaints which come into the area office. And just to update you all, the new gully wagon for Tynedale should be with us in the next couple of weeks, because I believe there's 4 new gully wagons came in. We've actually received them, but they must be still with Fleet Transport, getting inspected. As with Storm Rowan before Christmas and also the last couple of months, Storm Malacori and Dudley, the area staff have been working around the clock again, because I think the last time I was here I did think it would be finished within a couple, 2 to 3 weeks, I think, but obviously that's taken a bit longer with the subsequent storms and gullies having to be really cleaned and stuff like that. And we opened all the roads as soon as practically possible, and the clear up is now in sight of being finished. Extra resources have been brought in with the trade teams in each of our inspection areas. Extra gully wagons and also extra sweepers to assist us with the clean-up. We have also had tractors and flails in operation, cutting brush back and getting everything back as far as we can, but as was earlier mentioned, they are now being off fire due to the bird nesting season. Trade teams have also been stood down, and we are concentrating on the signage around the areas and the drainage. With regard to the drainage, we still have a dedicated gang going round and within the areas, renewing gully pots, cross drains, ditching, and any known problems. We've recently had a gang at Priestlands below the chip shop where there was a flooding issue. I think we will be having a gang in the next week or so going to Newbuff. They're going to put an 8-go drain because of the flooding where the pub is. We're going to put an 8-go drain in there. We've also got a drainage issue at Lane Head outside Kraken View where something's gone wrong with the pipes and the large has gone boggy. And then obviously there's also the holiday home there, and it's creating a few issues with them. And then after that, we'll be going around the Nine Banks area because there's quite a few drainage issues up there. With regards to the Highways Investment Programme and the LTP servicing works, the A696 at Murlow House, the civils works there is now completed with the widening of the junction, and the resurfacing is due to take place on the 19th of April, beyond the road closure. With regards to Hexham, obviously with the A69 works, a lot of our works that we had in Hexham have been put back. So this summer could be quite busy in Hexham. Because also we've got all the works out with the high school, with all the new junctions going in. So I think through that 6-week period of the school holidays, I think that road's going to be closed, while they do all the junction works and the footway works and drainage works on that road. But we also have a flags to flags job on Hencourts to do, and resurfacing on Hencourts to do. So we are in consultation with Streetworks now as how the best way we can do it, we get all this work done in the school holidays. It's because obviously we cannot work there any other time but school holiday, and it's, I think on Hencourts, I think there's about 6 weeks works there, you know, but we've got to discuss that with Streetworks, how we're going to do that best. Fell House Fell, that's still with design as to what we're going to be doing there. They've talked about verge hardening, passing places and all that, but we still haven't come back with anything issued. Station Road Putter, that's still with design as to what's going to happen there. West Woodburn, I think everything's all been passed there and all the legal documents have now been signed. I'm just waiting for that to be issued so I can programme them works in to get that resurfacing done. West Road Putter, that's surfacing started there on Monday, and hopefully that scheme will be finished by Friday night. We've also done some flags to flex works in around Priestlands on St Paul's Road. We've done 2 sections, and we've also started the prep work in Haltwhistle on Castle Hill for the footpaths to be slurry sealed in the summertime. In total for this financial year, Tynedale area will have completed an area of just under 115,000 square metres of permanent servicing. With regards to member schemes, Ryden Mill, I think all the works is there is finished and the road markings is down, the anti-skids down, but we're just waiting for street lighting and city works to actually get the crossings turned on. I don't know if there's some issue there because I haven't been informed with that. Yeah. On Tuesday, the 22nd of this month, we'll be altering the parking bays in Corbridge between Lyndhurst and number 7 Castle Hill, not Castle Hill, Hill Street. They changed the parking bays so they drove in, but the cars have been driving in and the front of the cars has been over the footpath. So we're bringing the footpath out another metre and bringing the car parking bays out another metre. We're putting bollards in and stuff like that. So that's going to be starting in the next couple of weeks. With regards to winter services, obviously, as mentioned before, it's been a mild winter for winter services really, although we do have had a few issues on the higher ground. Hopefully it stays that way. And also the majority of staff, this is where it gets tricky, the majority of staff who are on winter services are also involved with the major clean-up after Arwen and all them, and also on the day-to-day running of local services and highways delivery. So please be mindful that our staff have been quite busy this year, and I would like to thank all the supervisors and staff that we've had for all the work they've done this year, because I don't think the public actually see what our staff do, you know, with regards to what they do on the roads. And I think that's a brief of it, and if anybody's got any questions, I'll take the questions, and if I don't know, I'll take a note of them and get Mr. Olive to get back in touch with you.
Thank you very much, Andy. 2 seconds there, Councillor Kenny. You're going to be the first, by the way. You're going to be the first. Yeah, I'm going to come straight back to you in a second. I just want to, before I forget, I want to say you are appreciated. If not by the members of the public who wake up in the morning and find something done, we know what goes on behind the scenes, and so I think, and both of you, both departments. Me personally, it's been a very nice listening to you today, because St Paul's Road pavements, fantastic. The work at the chip shop, which I've been going on for about 3 or 4 years about, they've done an absolutely marvellous job. So, I mean, I think that was Chris Owen and his gang, so many thanks to that. And obviously I've been campaigning to get Hencourts, both lots done, so I'm over the moon with that. But I couldn't help but saying that, because we all love gullies and gully cleaners, and so there you go, Councillor Kennedy.
It was just about the question that I raised about the school? Is anything?
Well, I know part of the where the works for the high school on Whetstone Bridge, all them gullies have come down there. I think they're to be renewed. I presume so because I've heard them talk about drainage. It's not my scheme.
Yeah.
But I've heard them talk about the drainage and all that and getting it all sorted.
Right.
There. I know they're aware of the issues above Whetstone Bridge where it comes like from the hydro down over.
Yes.
But there is also a scheme which hasn't been issued yet for Allendale road resurfacing.
Right.
And I don't know whether that'll be incorporated into that LTP programme scheme or not.
Right.
You know, but I know they're aware of it, and they've had cameras up there, and they've had jetters up there, and it's a lot of the trouble is service has gone through drains and roots in the drains.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, but I know that it is something going on up there.
Thank you.
But I couldn't exactly confirm what.
Right. Thank you, sir.
Was it a two-part question? Was it? Councillor?
No, it was just the other one was
that was
the gully machine. So great.
Okay, Councillor Oliver.
Thanks for that update. That was really helpful. Did you say the bollards in Hill Street in Corbridge, is that going to be, did you say next Wednesday?
They're starting on a Tuesday the 22nd.
Tuesday the 22nd?
Yes.
That's brilliant.
And it's going to, I've got letters to go out to the residents there, which will be going out tomorrow, and probably take about 2 weeks roughly to do the works.
Fantastic, that's
Yeah.
great. Thank
The
you.
only trouble is because obviously them parking bays will not be in use during the works.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it could get a bit.
We've got. We're losing some for Songs of Praise as well. So.
Right, yeah. When Songs of Praise? Because I know. Is that before the 22nd or?
I think it might be around about the same
I
time.
because I was going to start on the Monday, but I couldn't start on the Monday because I was car parking being suspended on the Sunday.
Yeah, that'll be
Monday,
it. So they
I
must
had
be
to stay on
filming
the
it on
Tuesday.
Sunday. It's they've got needed spaces for the crew. Can I just ask a couple of other questions? One was about. Do you know if the drainage works up sort of the road that runs sort of adjacent to Prospect Hill? I think sort of Templey Grange area above Corbridge. We've had some sort of fairly constant issues with quite a lot of water running off the fields onto the road and then down the road. And certainly there was some stuff done. I did see last sort of late autumn when I was out cycling, I saw that they'd been and done stuff, but I've had another email from somebody asking about it. And do you know if there's anything still going on?
I wouldn't know, but I'll find out and get back to you.
Fantastic. And then, thank you. And then final question, just in terms of gully wagons, great news about the extra gully wagon. What sort of extra capacity is that going to give across the west?
Well, with that, I would have to get back to you as well because obviously the gully is on the maintenance side of our department.
Right.
And I'll get Andy Oliver when he comes back off his holidays to get in touch with that.
Is Andy on holiday again? Is he?
He is, he is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I hope you're not actually singing, are you? At the Songs of Praise. Thank God for that. By the way, I did. When I was at 1969, I was on Songs of Praise at Hexham Abbey. Just thought I'd tell you about that, everybody. I know most of you weren't alive then, but I just thought I'd drop that into you anyway. Seal School Squire and Hexham Abbey Choir. Thank you very much. Councillor Miller.
Yeah, well, when Perda gets over, I'm hopefully going to have some photographs taken of the new equipment we've been buying because we've actually spent quite a lot of dosh on new gear. My understanding is that we now have, well, I've actually seen one of them, four brand new gully suckers, big whale ones. And the jetters that are on them, I'm told, are at least twice as good as the jetters that we had previously. So, they're more up to the job, I think. One of the problems now is that we can't just suck stuff up and dump it in the field somewhere. It's all going to go away and be disposed of properly. So they are better pieces of kit. And the other thing, the hot box, I believe it's an 18-tonner. So, it's a considerable size, this one, which means that, we're not running around with transit pickups with half a tonne of tar in back and forward to the quarry. So, again, it's progress, doing proper jobs with tar that's at the right temperature and all the rest. So, I'm looking forward to some improvements.
It's funny you should say that, but there is a wagon goes round there doing it to Subby, I believe. Not as good as our boys, put it that way. But they do a job, and that's fine. Councillor Scott.
Hello. I just wondered what the plan was for for Station Road, you mentioned.
But at the minute, I believe they're still tying up all the legal ties for buying the land, and I believe they're going to divert the drain through the station car park.
Right, okay.
And straight into the manhole at the bottom. But that's just me guessing until I get the final drawings of what's going on. 'Cause I don't think it was feasible with all the utilities going back down the road where the original culvert went, due to all the damage that's been caused.
Right, okay. Thank you.
Councillor Dale.
Thank you. Can I just ask the hot box, is it the JCB one that Chris was trying? Is it? I don't know, because they had a big conversation, because the new one, JCB ones came out, and everybody was saying, great, we're going to try this. And I think Chris was hopped on it, but I think Yorkshire got it before.
And I think they sent them back.
And then he took the umbrage? I don't know.
I think they looked at them, and I think for our area, I don't think they were the ideal for the manpower on them for what they were going to achieve.
I don't know, I'm just asking that, so it's not the JCB one anyway.
No.
Right, that's what I'll tell my husband.
Not that I'm aware of anyway.
I don't mean to contradict Andy at all, but there is a JCB machine. Yeah. There is a JCB machine which we have bought, which is a machine that comes with lots of attachments. Yeah. It's sort of a one base machine that can do most jobs. So we have purchased one of those as well.
So that's the one you have.
The JCB.
Is that the JCB with the bush and the planer attachments and stuff? Aye.
Right, thank you very much, and thank you to you both, Stephen, and I'm now going to call you Santa Fisher, because all the little gifts you've just given me today. So you're about 3 months late, but I'm more than happy with that. So yes, I mean, as usual, pass on your thanks to all your crews and things like that, because it's without you, well, you know, you do the bulk of the work. Thank you very much. You can stay or leave. I don't even know where up to now. Local services. Turn the page.
Cycling and walking.
Is there a presentation going on, is it? Yeah. Just give us a couple of minutes while Nicola puts the presentation up. Sarah, where are you? Thank you very much for hanging on in here, but we do like to have certain questions and, you know. Right, thanks as always, Nicola, for running around there. Right, members, we're now going to move on to item 12. When you're ready. LQIPs, or local cycle and walking infrastructure plans, and I'm going to pass you over to Sarah Rowell, the Principal Transport Officer, who will give us an update on the consultation of walking and cycle infrastructure plans. Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so local cycling infrastructure plans, known as LCWIPs. So just to begin with, a bit of policy background. So the Department for Transport Policy that supports this is the gear change strategy, and that states that we want and we need to see a step change in cycling and walking in the coming years, and we need to transform the role of cycling and walking in our transport system. The Northumberland-based policy is called Our Way, and we want more people to walk and cycle more often in the county, and will deliver high-quality, safe walking and cycling experience. And finally, there's a Northumberland Climate Change Action Plan, and that states that transport is the single biggest contributor of emissions in Northumberland, and decarbonising transport requires a shift to short journeys being made by bicycle or on foot. So this just gives us some of the benefits of more people choosing to walk and cycle more often, and these include health and well-being benefits due to the increased physical activity, improvements to congestion and air quality due to a reduction in vehicle trips, and also the economic benefits. So what are LC whips? Local cycling and walking infrastructure plans, known as LC whips, are an evidence-led approach to developing walking and cycling networks in our towns and identifying infrastructure requirements, and these are supported by the DFT, the Department for Transport. The LC whip process involves information gathering, walking and cycling network planning, and a prioritisation of proposed infrastructure schemes. We feel the development of LC whips put the authority in the best position to achieve modal shift towards more active and environmentally forms of transport, and ensure that infrastructure schemes deliver the best value for money. LC whips also put the authority in a stronger position as funding opportunities become available. So we have developed the LC whips following 5 main principles as laid out in this slide here. So principle 1 is our walking and cycling vision, as I mentioned. LC whips will look to enhance the pedestrian and cycling environment in our main towns, and we believe that walking and cycling infrastructure improvements will enable residents to travel actively and reduce dependency on the car. Principle 2, LC whips are an evidence-led approach to walking and cycling network planning. This puts us in the best position to support more people to walk and cycle. And the evidence base that supports the LC whips for the towns includes the current transport network for the town, the current travel patterns across that town, main trip generators and attractors, and these include train and bus stations, travel to school data, road traffic accident data, social economic data, this includes car ownership, and also town-specific examination of the routes that are most likely to increase levels of walking and cycling. So principle 3 is the geographical extent of the LC whips. So within Northumberland, we've decided to focus the LC whips on the 12 main towns in the county as outlined in the economic strategy, and this includes Hexham, Haltwhistle and Prudhoe. This will ensure that key employment sites, travel to work areas, transport interchanges and significant new housing developments are considered as part of this process. It is also believed that our main towns have the greatest potential for growing walking and cycling trips. So principle 4, the proposed improvements. So proposed infrastructure improvements vary from town to town and will be designed to ensure usability, safety and suit the environment. We'll use the latest design standards, focusing on the need of the user and the opportunity to improve the built environments within our town, and we'll strive to adhere to national guidelines. So principle 5, priority corridors. So we've used the data to identify priority walking and cycling corridors in each of the main towns. For each town, we've identified 3 cycling corridors and 2 walking corridors. And these corridors essentially show a proposed area for the walking and cycling route will cover. However, the exact alignment will be decided following further investigations. It is proposed that these identified in priority corridors are where we initially focus our investment. So to identify these priority corridors, after identifying these priority corridors in the main towns, these will be prioritised using aspects that are important to the county, such as a forecast of increased walking and cycling trips and a reduction in car usage, the population who directly benefit from the proposed corridor, the area served by the proposed corridor, such as does it serve a school or an area of low car ownership, and also does the corridor improve transport connections. So LC whip progress to date. So this has been a joint project between Strategic Transport, where I work, and Technical Services, so it's great to have Robin here today. The Northumberland Walking and Cycling Board have overseen the development of LC whips in the county. So to date, we've drafted 12 LC whip documents for the 12 main towns. Through this process, we've used data to identify walking and cycling networks in these main towns, and also identify the free cycling and two walking corridors. So just briefly mentioning the infrastructure improvements. So the proposed infrastructure improvements, as I mentioned before, will vary from town to town. We will strive to adhere to national design guidelines, and that would be the Cycling Infrastructure Design Guidelines by the DFT. This will ensure that networks and routes are coherent, direct, safe, comfortable and attractive. And inclusive design and accessibility will run through all of these designs. This ensures that infrastructure is accessible to all and the needs of vulnerable pedestrians and local people are considered. However, finding the space in the urban environments to implement these schemes may require some level of reallocation of road space in favour for pedestrians and cyclists, and may include issues such as the removal of on-street parking in certain locations. This will be assessed during the detailed design stage of the project, kept to a minimum where possible, and done through public consultations at every step. So we are currently running public consultations on our LC whips, and this is the start of our conversation with the public. And further, more scheme-specific consultations will be conducted if funding is secured for schemes to move forward into delivery. So the current consultation aims to raise awareness of the Northumberland Our Way vision for walking and cycling, raise awareness of the LC whip work, gather baseline data and feelings towards the current and opportunities to improve walking and cycling infrastructure, introduce the principles used to develop the LC whips, and also seek views on the proposed walking and cycling networks in the town and the proposed priority corridors. So this is the final slide. So the consultation is on the Northumberland County Council's Citizen Space portal and can be found on the NCC website. It was launched last week on the 7th of March and will run to the 15th of April. There's a gear change email address there, and we're happy to receive comments or questions and queries through that inbox. And I'd be happy to answer any questions tonight if I can. Okay.
Thank you very much, Sarah. I'm not sure about anybody else, but my eyesight was struggling. I'm sat right in the middle now, and one end you might be better, but is there any way you can email these slides to Nicola?
I've got them.
You've got them, have you?
Circulate them tomorrow.
Yes, fantastic. Oh, that's answered that question. That's brilliant. I had a meeting with, I can't remember with yourself, but it was a couple of years ago. It was yourself. And somebody else who definitely can't remember. Martin. Was Martin, was it? Yeah. Podovan, yeah. And about two-ish years ago, give or take a year, because I'm hopeless on dates. And we were talking about interconnectivity between different places. So say, for instance, I mean, obviously people have their own towns, but if I talk about Hexham, you know, would people travel into Hexham from, say, Corbridge to work, or Hayden Bridge, or Acombe, or places like that? And they were some of the routes that we have seen would be good for more cycling to take place in. I mean, are they progressing? Or is that one of the priorities you got? Is to you know, connect towns so you can do away with cars, or at least reduce the number of cars, maybe not in the winter, because that's what we were talking about two-ish years ago.
So most of the LC whips, as they stand at the moment, do generally focus on the main towns, because that's what we envisage will be the best opportunity to get more people walking and cycling. However, Hexham's slightly more unique, because when we looked at the data for Hexham, we did highlight that settlements such as Acom and also Corbridge were important to the town. That's what the data showed us. So one of the cycling corridors in Hexham does extend towards Corbridge and towards Acom as well. So at the moment, what we've done is we very much followed the data. That's what the LC whips at the moment. But the reason behind the public consultations is we want people's views on what the extent of the LC whip should be. But the towns at the moment show the best opportunity to get people out of cars and get the modal shift towards walking and cycling.
Yeah, I mean, Acre itself has obviously had some work done on the old Hexham Road, and so it's more accessible to become a cycling route and things like that. But, if somebody actually goes on to this consultation and asks the blunt question, what is happening with a cycle route between, say, Hexham and Corbridge, or that's, I mean, how can they get some form of answer to that particular question? Because as councillors, they're the questions we actually get asked. They don't always on about the whole minutiae of the details. They just want to say, well, I want to have a connection here. When's that going to arrive? And the questions are actually quite blunt.
So the consultation as it stands at the moment is about that high level direction of travel in terms of the routes. The next stage will be that we will take a strategy for approval through the appropriate processes, and then we'll have to look for funding to deliver some of these schemes. Certainly we don't believe we have the funding within the council to deliver a lot of the schemes proposed through the LC whips, but what the LC whip process will do is put us in a better position to draw in external funding.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, obviously massively support this, very keen on doing whatever we can to improve cycling and walking infrastructure for a number of reasons. Obviously the health benefits you've talked about, but there's some fairly significant economic reasons to do it as well. And I think particularly in the west of the county, we already have a strong cycling and walking sort of tourism offer, but that could be stronger and it could bring more money into the county. And it could actually position us as one of the the very top places in the country, because we've already got national cycleways, and so there's a massive opportunity. But I think we have to be really ambitious, and we have to look at the whole of the Tyne Valley, and we have to think about the Roman Wall and think about the valley floor, and how do we connect the two, because there's a pretty steep hill between the bottom of the valley and the Roman Wall, and at what point and where do we position the gateways, and I think it needs to be right across the council, so Regen and tourism and Northumberland tourism, and everybody needs to be involved. So that was just my sort of little rant, but can I ask a few questions as well? I think you mentioned sort of individual town plans in draft stage. Are they ready for us to see yet? I mean, I'd love to see what there is for Hexham. Obviously, I massively welcome a corridor between Hexham and Corbridge, and we've been talking about it for several years now. But is that a document that we can see?
So the main output of those plans are the networks, the proposed networks, and the proposed priority corridors, and we are consultant on those, and they are in the consultation. But I'd be happy to forward them on separately if that would be helpful.
Yeah, and if there's any more detail on the sort of specific routes, because I've looked at that, and there's a sort of red blob that sort of stops at the edge of Hexham. It'd be interesting to see how far it goes.
The routes will the actual what will go into those routes and the actual alignment of those routes will come a bit later on when we start to do design work. That's the reason why they are quite thick lines, just to give it, we haven't done that level of design to look to see the exact alignment and what those routes will look like at the moment. And
there'll be sort of consultation at that stage, and local landowners will have an opportunity to have an input. Can I ask, one of the things in terms of getting people sort of out of cars and onto bikes or onto their feet, well, particularly onto bikes, is going to be around, it's fine if you live in Corbridge and you work in Hexham, it's a few miles, it's a few minutes on a bike. But if you're working in Newcastle and living in Corbridge, what you need is an infrastructure. You're not going to cycle all the way into Newcastle every day. A few people do, but not many. So you need the trains and the buses to be able to carry bikes. So if we spend all these many millions of pounds on improving our infrastructure, but the transport companies don't actually put more spaces. I've been on Newcastle Station at the last train and not being able to get on because you're only allowed 2 bikes well, sorry, not the last train, but a train on a sort of late Saturday afternoon, and had to wait for quite a while. And that happens, you know, and that puts people off. And if you're commuting and you're only allowed 2 bikes on a busy train, and actually, you know, so we need the trains and the buses to be able to cope with more bikes. We also need public buildings where, you know, and obviously a lot of public sector employees in Northumberland. I don't know what it's like now, but, you know, certainly, you know, a couple of years ago, the shower facilities, even at County Hall, were pretty woeful. They were in the dungeon in the basement, and nobody knew about them. But if we're going to encourage more people to cycle, we need to provide better facilities for them to be able to you know, get off their bike and have a shower before they start work and that sort of thing. So is that something that can kind of be promoted within the council and without?
Yeah, I think it's slightly separate to the LC work. So another project I lead on is sort of the behaviour change elements of some of this work, and that'll be working with businesses to ensure they have the facilities to support more people to walk and cycle. Just going back in terms of the transport interchanges, bus operators, train operators will be a key stakeholder in the LC whip development, and we have sent the consultation to them, and we'll continue talks with them in the future. But you're right, it'll be really important, and the LC whips do focus on these interchanges as well, so we have to get the facilities right there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Riddle.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. You know, I think we've got to say that this administration is the first administration to actually commit a serious amount of money in this year's budget to cycling and walking. That said, you know, that's not what this is about today. This is about the LC whips and the consultation on the 12 main towns. And, you know, we will get some very different views, because some of the things in there are controversial. You know, this idea of taking up road space for bikes and taking up parking spaces for bikes, etc. There'll be two opposite ends of spectrum of people, I would imagine, in views. And, you know, that's fine. But, you know, let's be clear here that there's probably, or we hope, that there's going to be a lot of money available. And the idea of this is to have bottom drawer, shovel-ready schemes that we've consulted on that we can go for the money with. So that's the main purpose of getting the consultation done at the moment, and having something that's just ready to take advantage of any money that comes along to progress things.
Yeah, you're right, and I think the connectivity between towns probably is the thing that needs to be in place first, and then the doing up of those towns when they're connected is maybe something that follows on later. Councillor Waddell, next.
So I was just wondering how you're going to factor in that some of these routes might have to go through the bordering local authority, so Gateshead and Newcastle, because like when I was a parish councillor in Wylam, I pushed for the Wagonway to be resurfaced, but because that crosses into Newcastle, there was huge issues with it, and it's only just been completed in the last few weeks. You know, with Prudhoe, that borders on Gateshead, so there'll be issues there. With that route would probably have to cross into that local authority, so wondering how that's going to be factored in.
Okay. Well, funny enough, I actually spoke to Gateshead and North Tyneside Council this morning about the LC whip consultations, and we did talk about this because it's been a long process, the LC whips, a couple of years ago as well, and we've talked about where their priorities are and where our priorities are. But you're right, they might be slightly different when we go forward for funding. So I think we'll just have to, you know, keep talking to them as we go forward. But we've certainly made sure that where our networks meet, they do meet together rather than missing each other. So we have taken that step.
Thank you. Councillor Deal.
Can I start with saying thank you very much? I couldn't actually see it very closely, even though I'm here, but I will get a copy of it. Thank you for that. Just to say, I will pick up Councillor Riddle by saying about the cycling and walking board. I actually created the cycling and walking board in 2014 and brought all partners together. And we've got a really good document here called Geared Up. And we worked with Stuart McNaughton and others, and all the partners there together, and they're still there now. I think one of the main things that came out, which we discussed, was actually the difference between popping around the town as against actually using it as a transport measure. So one of the things which is quite right is Holly was mentioning about the wagon way. I do have people who cycle from my ward to Newcastle to work. But the big difference is, and this is where we have to be very careful, is that I cycle, I ride a horse, and I feel safer on a horse than I do actually on a cycle. And that's the difference, is the people I know, a lot of people who will cycle, some will cycle down the M1, absolutely fine, no nerves at all. But we're generally trying to say to everybody, you know, we want to make a safe infrastructure for you to get out, pop round your town and feel safe and be safe. So that is the most important thing. That's very different from the people cycling all the way to Newcastle and back. Once we get those people who don't feel safe feeling better, they can then maybe, you know, cycle to Newcastle if they walk there and back. So basically it's more like the A1 and taking off junctions here to so-and-so, junctions here to so-and-so, which is a much cheaper and better way to do it. It's already there to Prado. I actually got pricing towards the cost of taking Riley Mill to Stocksfield, so we could link into the cycleway off-road, because that actually I've got a price for that. I've got all that costed. But the prices are not cheap. And the £220,000 you've got in for this year wouldn't even cover the cost. And that cost was done by the County Council some years ago, so it will have gone up. So I think what we're trying to do, and I think absolutely great, we want everybody to walk more, we want everybody to cycle. And I'll give you a copy of the Geared Up that Janice Rose did, so you can have a look. But we need to take into account that there are those people who will get on a bike and cycle anywhere, and those people who actually are trying to nurture onto using a cycle. And it's very difficult. I remember when an officer, unknown to me, put double yellow lines down in Corbridge, on the Corbridge Road, and everybody went mad, and they had to be burnt off. The other thing is about cycling is actually on the main roads. And I wouldn't put any child, or in fact I wouldn't cycle down the A695 with all the actual, you know, we've got a tremendous amount of heavy vehicles going upwards and backwards and forwards, and even walking on the pavement you're drawn in. So, you know, it really is something that needs a lot and lot of thought. So saying, fine, great, we know what we want to do, but it isn't going to be quite as easy, and certainly 220,000, although it's a good start, but it is for cycling and walking, and that's pavements. So, I mean, we had in ours that we were going to bring £5 million down by 2020, and we went down to London, government kept on promising, yes, we're going to be here, and actually, the big thing about when we went down was the government said, you're the first people who've actually put together a cycling walking board. Isn't that clever? So Northumberland was in the lead, John, before you put the money in, but we were in the lead. I was an independent, I wasn't political, popped in. I've got a copy of the Geared Up now, it's really good, and actually it says everything. So I have to say, you know, good for you, I'm glad you put the money, but you must recognise that other people were doing a lot of work in beforehand. But the biggest thing is,
okay,
we need
let's
to take...
move on now, please. Let's move on now. It's not a competition. Thank you.
Can I just...
No. Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor Dale. That was excellent. We don't need a reply, Councillor Riddle. We've got quite a bit to go through. We're not 10 minutes from having to cancel standing orders. So I'm going to go to Councillor Morford first.
Thank you. Just two quick questions. First of all, I wanted to say I totally agree with Councillor Oliver's point that the facilities for bikes on trains on the Tyne Valley line are really poor, need to be improved. My questions are, thanks for the presentation, Sarah. I think the consultation's been open for 8 days now. Have you had a good response? I've certainly been sharing the link to it very widely.
I've just looked earlier today, we had 300 so far, that's 1 week, and I don't think that's too bad. We'll continue pushing it through our social media channels for the rest of the period.
Brilliant, thank you. Second question is a bit trickier. We've been talking about the Allendale Road, about the need for traffic calming measures, but it's also a priority walking and cycling route in the Hexham LC whip. So will the different teams be working closely together to make sure that improvements for walking and cycling enhance the traffic calming measures and vice versa? And is it going to be easy to make sure that happens?
It's the same teams working on the projects, to be honest. Yeah, so the LC whips were a partnership between Strategic Transport, which is myself, and Robin's team. So, yes.
Can I come back briefly? Of course you can. Yeah, I had a feeling they might be the same teams, and that's great. But how easy will it be to make sure the two different things support each other? I think that is going to be a challenge, isn't it?
I think from my point of view, it's trying to make sure I split it all up and identify exactly why we're doing a specific function, and all the way through that specific task, always go back and double check that we're following the reasons why we started that specific task, and they should come together. But if no one provides any funding to do the corridor up at Allendale Road, or when we go out to consult on it, everyone says, what we don't want a corridor up Allendale Road, then we're left with specifically just looking at a safety scheme for anything that the data comes up with.
Thank you. I'm going to come to you next, Councillor Shaw, but before I do, you mentioned you're working together, but clearly we also have the hussars going on in Hexham, and there is some street work possibly going on with that. Have you got any input into that?
Yeah, we're aware of that as well.
I thought you might be. Councillor Shaw.
Yeah, I'm not going to talk too long, Chairman, because these meetings tend to drag on now compared to the old days. Yes, I've received a lot of emails this week, as I'm sure you've seen, you know, as Chairman of Hull Town Council, but, you know, from the partnership, and there's all sorts of things going on, the emails. And the gist of it was, you know, there seemed to be a willingness to try to meet, you know, the Town Council, the partnership and other interested bodies seem to have lots of different views on this, and there's a massive sort of emailed campaign in Holveston about this at the minute. And part of the discussion really is, you know, as the Chairman alluded to earlier, is trying to link up the towns. You know, at Holveston we've got the Bottom Road, for example, and you come into Bard Mill, and for years there's all that land on the left-hand side or the right-hand side, whichever way you're travelling, which could be used, and, you know, it had a fence and everything. If there's going to be a cycle track, and it just never happened. And obviously, you know, in recent LTP meetings, we've talked a lot about trying to link up Bard Mill with Hayden Bridge, and Hayden Bridge to Hexham, and Hexham to Corbridge at these funding meetings, you know, and so these LTP discussions. Councillor Dale is absolutely right. At the end of the day, you know, we haven't got sufficient money in the capital LTP programme, and we're going to have to rely on government funding. But let's be honest with you, now's probably as good a chance as any we've ever had for getting funding for cycling and walking, because it's the big thing, you know, that encouraging people to be healthy and all the rest of it. So my question is, you know, is there, you know, there's a real keenness, and I'm getting more and more people asking the question now, particularly at Hayden Bridge, you know, what is happening, for example, with the Hayden Bridge to Hexham to Corbridge link, which has been talked about for a long time now, and we never seem to get any updates on it. And bearing in mind the email correspondence, which you've received, one in particular, pages of the damn thing, you know, I'm just sort of wondering, you know, if we can extend some of the consultation to the various meetings of local areas, so we can actually discuss things with you, rather than at this sort of meeting where everybody's here, you know, with not the local people concerned who may have opinions on them. In other words, I'd like to involve the consultation more at local level, rather than just on emails and online and everything else.
So this is the first part of the consultation. This is the start of our conversation, and this is really high level. I think when we start to develop the schemes, we will do a lot more consultations with the towns, with the communities, but we have to start somewhere, and this is where we've started. Yeah.
So it is envisioned that the actual consultations will involve the local people, but well, let's be honest with you, affected and are going to benefit from it.
As the schemes develop, they definitely will, yes. Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Councillor Kennedy.
Yeah, I'll just be quick. There's I'm conscious Northumberland County Council is one of the largest employers in the county, and that is a scheme called Cycle to Work. And I was just wondering, does the County Council operate that scheme, and is it popular with its staff, or is there do we need to sort of look to enhance staff starting to use bicycles as part of their coming to work, let's say?
So the County Council does support the scheme, and I have been in discussions recently with obviously people moving back into the workplace, and I think that would be a really good time to start to talk to employees about how they travel to that workplace and how we could use cars less. So we have started those conversations.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Sarah, for coming along and present that. And I'm sure we'll be looking forward to the next steps coming forward. So we can actually see, as Councillor Sharp said, that we're going to see some progress to actual spades in the ground, whatever. Okay, thank you very much. We're going to move on to item 13 now, which is appointments to outside bodies. And now we have Alan Sharp, Councillor Alan Sharp, who's volunteered for the Hull Whistle Partnership Limited, and Suzanne Fairless-Sagan for the Queen's Hall Art Trust. Are we all happy with that? Everybody agree? No problems? Agree? Great. Move on then. Item 14, Local Area Council Work Programme. You have the work programme in front of you, as I'll always say at this time, or at least I hope I always say at this time. Don't wait for the monthly meeting. If you've got anything you want to add, contact myself and or probably more than me, Nicola here. And then, of course, we'll take that to the local area chairs meeting and see what we can get on. LQIPs, for instance, come from that. So we do listen. It can't always fit in, but we try our best. So if you can do that, that would be brilliant. And anybody want to ask anything about that before we move on to the next one? Councillor Sharp.
That's a very quick thing. Maybe Councillor Stewart can enlighten us here, but we were going to have a discussion with the Tyne Valley Railway users group, and I'm keen, particularly with things perhaps we've talked about earlier, and that's one that, Gordon, you mentioned to me that once, about 2 or 3 months ago.
I think it's the vast majority of the wards around here is something which we handy to have, and they usually give presentations, so I'll back you on that, Alan, if you'd like a presentation.
I mean, they did approach us, and I think it would be good if we could try to. I'm not sure if we've got representatives still on the board, but I think it would be useful to see what work they are doing at the minute, and the improvements they've made to the service and the trains and this, that, and the other. And perhaps we can pick up Councillor Oliver's point about the cycles on it as well. I think it would be useful.
It is. If you look at the work plan at the top, it says to be listed. So, in other words, everybody knows about them. We just haven't a timetable in at the moment. Off-street electric vehicle charging points, cycle and walking boards. So we've had from the LQIPs in, not the board. Enforcement, which we talked about, I think last meeting or the meeting before. TV rug, so that's on there, and broadband updates. So it is in the pipeline, Alan. I don't know whether we can maybe. I might push. I'll see if I can push it a bit more at the next meeting.
But to be
no,
honest,
absolutely. I'll give him a little bit of nudge at the next chairs and vice chairs meeting, or if I don't, I'm sure Councillor Kennedy might remember. Councillor Morfitt.
I'm sorry if I've asked this before, but where it says off-street electric vehicle charging points, what's it actually referring to there? Does it mean on-street? Okay, yeah.
Right, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does, yeah.
Could be either. But yeah, I mean, there was these ones that were going to be set into the curbs, weren't there? That was one, and then obviously there's the ones in the car parks and things like that, so it's probably the whole lot. A holistic view, I gather. Right, date of the next meeting. Right, the next meeting is scheduled to be Tuesday the 12th of April at 4 o'clock. Well, yes, I'm actually holding this back for effect, you see. And I'd like to give this one with a personal attention to Councillor Sharp as well. Myself and Nicola have a meeting on Thursday at Hexham House with the health and safety person to see if we can we're going to do I'm not going to do the risk assessment, but he's going to do a risk assessment, and with the hope of getting it back in for the next meeting. Because as the regulations relax slightly, then it becomes more viable to do that. Obviously, one of the issues we have had is, of course, this is going out, being live streamed here. Okay, we haven't got that facility at Hexham House, and if we can't live stream, then we need to get the public there, and that's what it's basically all about, is making sure we can get the public there, and at the moment that hasn't been accepted. But when we find out, hopefully on Thursday, we'll let you know exactly what's happening. But I would like to think we could go back up there. Not that there's anything wrong with this place, of course, but yeah. So hopefully we will let you know, which is why I'm not saying anything now. Do we have any urgent business? Yes.
I was just going to say, obviously size of the room is an issue. I spent a day trying to contact churches, scout huts, you know, trying to find somewhere that was available on a Tuesday evening. And I'm really struggling to find a larger premises with the dates that we have of our meetings. So if anybody knows or has any suggestions, please send me an email.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that places are available. Yeah, we take that down, Edgar, take that down. Yeah, hang on. Places are available, and all these places, well, apart from Edgar, like you mentioned, the Mart and all that, they have other things going on. Well, we've been to them all, I can assure. In fact, I think I told you that last time, because we tried to get one there last meeting, and the day before, Nicola was all day on the phone trying to get these, and I just, every time she phoned us up and said we can't do that, I would suggest another place to her, or she would go in and try that as well. So it's not for want of looking, but I mean, yeah, I don't think Edgar's been mentioned before, so maybe I'll get a contact and we'll maybe try that later. But thank you very much. We've done the high school, haven't we?
The problem that we have with the schools is, with the current meeting times, it's clashing with the children on site.
Right.
So that is the problem that we have with the schools. It rules them out at the moment.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, we'll move on from that, because we will try our best. I say we, it's the royal we. It's really Nicola. Was there any urgent business you've been notified of? I'm not aware of any, so we'll thank you very much. And we didn't need to cancel standing orders, because we just made it by the skin of the teeth. So thank you very much, folks. Have a wonderful, safe drive home.